have given a name to my pain. The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill the Bat of Gotham. You don't really think you'll win, do you? I'm Batman.
Hey now, welcome to episode 92 of the Batman on Film podcast. BOF is a sponsor as well as a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network. In addition to the BOF podcast, you can find other great shows such as Comics on Consoles. Ooh. And when you know it, the host of that podcast is right here to tell you all about it.
Comics on Consoles, a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, and we explore comics-based video games. So any video game that has featured a character from comics, superheroes or not, we try to cover. Next issue is going to focus on 2008's Iron Man, which should be a lot of fun. Thank you for that, Ryan. That's very nice of you. No problem. It's part of my nefarious plan.
And who's speaking here?
Well, hold on. I'll get there. Check out Comics on Consoles and all the other fine shows at BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. And, as always, Batman on Film, authoritative, definitive, the dadgum original. Dadgummit. And I'm your host today, Ryan Haas. And here in the BOF cave with me tonight, as you heard, first of all, is very special guest and longtime BOF member Chris Clow. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for bringing me back. I can't wait to watch a movie that I have mixed feelings about.
Me too. Also with us, you heard him just a second ago. We are going to talk about his least favorite Batman movie, and he said he would never do a commentary. And yet, here he is, Mr. Rick Shew. How are you doing, Rick Shew?
I'm doing great, buddy. I'm sorry I jumped the gun on you a moment ago. I'm a little trigger happy because I have my on our last Star Wars show that we did with Paul Herman and Ricky Church. I forgot to actually introduce myself.
Right.
I didn't want that same fate for you.
Yeah, and I didn't want to not introduce myself. I wrote everything down for at least the first 5 minutes, so I won't forget anybody. And speaking of not forgetting anybody, we have one more person in the BOF cave with us tonight, and it's for his very first BOF podcast. It's BOF contributor Peter Verra. How are you, dude?
I'm good. How's everybody? I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I'm excited to have you on.
May I say something real quick? Yeah, just real fast. I just want to say that everybody on here are like, you guys are like my Bat family, right? And Peter and I are the only people, as far as I'm concerned, that I have physically met. Ryan, you and I haven't even met, and I talk to you almost as much as I do my own wife. I think on certain days of the week, maybe
certain days
we talk on the phone like schoolboys and schoolgirls. But Peter, we finally hooked up at the Wonder Woman
watch party in Dallas. Yeah,
and we had a great time in Dallas.
That was great.
And then, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, I had so much Tex-Mex. I've never eaten so many tacos in my life. It was amazing.
Did you go to Chewy's then?
Yeah, no, I did Chewy's right before the screening, and it was amazing. I forgot what I ate, but it was incredible.
And then you had brisket tacos at my buddy's bar, the Cold Beer Company.
I had like 3 different kinds of brisket tacos, and they were all amazing.
That's amazing. And then Chris Clow and I were supposed to hook up in Chicago a couple months ago, but those stars didn't just quite line up.
Not quite, but there will be another opportunity, I'm sure.
Yes, hopefully.
And then Ryan, when are you and I meeting? Ever?
I don't know. You could you could skip the BOF watch party in Austin and come to the one in North Carolina.
I'd love to come to the one in North Carolina. Unfortunately, the Austin BOF party is now morphed into a family weekend in Austin too. So,
yeah,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay,
family. I get it, but tonight's podcast is, I think it's a very special occasion because a few weeks ago we did do episode 89, which was a commentary on Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. And tonight, by popular demand or infamous demand or whatever you want to call it, for episode 92, we are going to provide a commentary on the 1992 follow-up Batman Returns, which is I'm super excited about. But before we start, I do want to copy what we did last time and pose a few questions to the panel. Is to just talk a couple of little moments before we start the commentary about where you were first exposed to the film and what your kind of current thoughts on it before we get into the thing. And I guess let's start with Peter.
I was exposed to this as a really young kid, and I remember as a child, I was absolutely terrified of the movie. So, like, I understand, like, I'm kind of the reason for Batman Forever, because as a kid, this movie scared the hell out of me. But as I grew older, I really, really liked the unique take on the Penguin and just Burton overall, like his style. And I think it's one of the better Elseworlds tales ever told, in my opinion. I really do enjoy the movie as an adult more than I did as a kid.
Cool. It's a cool take. Let's see. Peter likes it. Let's go to Chris. What do you think, Chris?
I was first exposed to this movie when it was in theaters. I think I was pretty young. I was probably 4.5 or so, and my grandmother took me to see it. And weirdly enough, and I shared the story in the last episode that I was on about my first association with the 89 film, having seen it as a baby, basically. So Batman at that point had already been in my bones. So when we went to the theater, I actually do remember kids being taken out of it crying. And, but weirdly enough, it never occurred to me to be afraid because my hero was there. That's what basically kept me going. And, you might see something that's kind of scary, but Batman's there and he's going to save the day. So that was what my child brain was thinking. And then as time has gone on and I've become much more accustomed with the source material, my general appreciation for the movie has gone down. But, I mean, I still recognize its significance, but I'm going to be interested to get into the meat of this with you gentlemen tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And, just to jump onto that story, like I said on the last episode, we're pretty much the same age, Chris. I was 4 years old when this movie came out, and this was my first Batman movie in the theater. My dad took me to see Batman Returns, and even as a kid, I knew it was weird and different, I guess. And I remember certain things like there's a certain scene coming up with, and that's the funny thing. It's like my dad didn't really care that I was seeing like goose spewing penguin or whatever, but he did. I do distinctly, vividly remember him covering my eyes during the scene in Wayne Manor between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, where they are, making out. And I just that is burned into my mind. So that was interesting. But I remember being very into the marketing and the McDonald's toys, and I had the backpack, I had the t-shirts, I had the stickers, I had the action figures, I had everything for Batman Returns. And I remember it very fondly as a marketing thing too. And maybe I latched onto the same kind of thing, Chris, like, even though a bunch of the stuff in the movie might be weird or might be different from Batman 89, Batman himself was still a constant. And that's kind of what I identified with. And by that time, you started to get things like Batman the Animated Series, along with reruns of the 60s show. So that was really when I was just a fan of Batman as a kid, and it all just kind of worked for me then. And now I still appreciate Batman Returns a lot, just because even though it's definitely not the most faithful, adaptation, and it certainly has a rocky story and some questionable decisions, I do like a lot of the elements, like the casting, like the costumes. I like the score. We'll talk about that a lot, I'm sure. But I'm sure Rick has a much different take on it. So before we start the commentary, what do you think, Rick?
Well, in 1990, Rocky V came out. Okay. And it's my first time ever to remember feeling so disappointed in a film. It really was. Like, I'm a huge fan of the Rocky franchise, and a shameless plug here, we will be doing a Rocky podcast here soon on BOF, talking about the franchise. But I remember Rocky V, I was a freshman in high school, or sophomore, and I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is what it's like to just be like gut punch disappointed in a film. And I thought that was rock bottom. And then this movie in 1992 came out called Batman Returns. And that's when I realized, well, it actually can get worse. So the way I look at Batman Returns is this. And just so everybody knows, I love Tim Burton's Batman. It is it's tied with Dark Knight Rises as my third favorite film, and they're both glorious. I love Dark Knight Rises and I love Batman 89. Just love them. And that's part of why I have such issue with this film. And I'll highlight some things through the commentary, is that this doesn't even feel like it's the same universe as Batman 89. To me, Batman 89 felt like a Batman film that Tim Burton made. Batman Returns feels and looks like a Tim Burton film with a few Batman characters in it. And that's the biggest distinction for me. So I'm not a fan, but I'm here with my friends. It's still Batman, and Michael Keaton is wonderful in the role. And so I will always enjoy watching him even in this movie.
When is the last time everyone has watched Batman Returns in its entirety?
About a year ago.
All right.
Probably a week ago.
Yes, you were doing your homework. I saw that on Twitter.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't remember. It must have been sometime in the last few years. But I mean, I watched it enough when I was a kid that I virtually have it memorized.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not particularly.
I will say I watch it often.
Yes. Thinking about it, I think I probably watch it. I watch it at least once a year, probably twice. And it's usually around Christmas time, because I do, like some of our pals, I know Andy DeGenova and Holly Backcast associates Batman Returns with Christmas. And so I usually do kind of watch it around Christmas time for some reason. Just
see, my go-to for
that.
that as a Batman fan is Holiday Nights. That's the one that I cannot get through the Christmas season without.
Yeah. Christmas with the Joker. I love that too.
Yeah,
that's another one. And Koopa Claus, the Mario Brothers Super Show. And that's a guilty pleasure. But, but I guess you guys are ready to do this?
Yes, sir.
All right. So if you're watching at home, we are going to start this at 0000, and I'm going to count down from 3, 2, 1 and go. And on go is when we're going to start the movie. All right. In 3, 2, 1, go. And we are off. Everybody sees.
We really are.
Yes.
Such a gorgeous score, though.
Yeah. And it just kind of instantly takes you into like, oh, okay, this is Batman. They have the first few notes of Batman's theme, and then we go into this.
Do you guys ever wonder where the Cobblepot estate actually is? Like, where's this window? What are they looking at in the beginning of this movie? Like, where is it?
I figure it's outside of Gotham enough. I guess it's outside of Gotham where all the rich people live, like the Waynes. I would
envisioned it like right by that park where they throw the carriage over. Like, I just kind of figured like that's the window he's looking at. Like, that's where I'm going to do it.
I'm always just thinking, why does his son reject the cigarette? But we do get him wearing the monocle later in the film.
Right. Well, and it's established that his dad here wears a monocle, which is cool. And of course, it's Pee Wee Herman.
I love the duck hint right here.
All right. So basically, this is when I knew I didn't like the movie. This scene right here. There goes the cat. Okay.
Yeah, that's when I tried to watch this with my wife, and the cat going did not sit well.
And then the way the parents look at one another, it's. But then the score kicks in again.
Yeah, but when he kills the cat too, it's almost like he's established as a bad seed right away. So all the other attempts at them trying to make him seem like a sympathetic character later on just kind of fall flat in a lot of places, or it seems very disingenuous. Because you do see people flip flop a lot in his emotions.
Did Burton choose a cat over a puppy for symbolic reasons for this film, you think?
There's cats everywhere. Wreck is logos cats.
That's true. Or is it foreshadowing to another cat character?
Here we have parents abandoning their baby.
Yep.
And throwing it into the sewer.
No pneumonia, no frostbite.
And then look at the mom.
Or is Penguin really the anti-Superman?
What do you mean?
Just
thrown away in the sewer.
I really don't think that they gave it that much thought.
I know.
I mean, so as we go into the titles, or he's going down now. Okay, now he's going down. See, my biggest problem with this movie overall, not to start on a total downer, but I've listened to interviews with everybody that was involved in making this movie, from the director on down to costume designer, production designer, stars, of course. And the one guy who seems most pivotally responsible for the tone of the movie, even more than Bo Welch, the production designer, and even more than Tim Burton, frankly, is Daniel Waters, the screenwriter.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
Daniel Waters has even said in interviews, and I'm sure that you guys have seen it in the Batman motion picture anthology, that it never occurred to them to represent Batman as he had been in the source material for nearly 60 years at that point. You know, it was just like, it didn't matter at all. And ultimately, that's the thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way about this movie. I mean, so we're treated back to this wonderful score. We're treated back to several of the actors that made the 89 film so great, including Michael Gough and Michael Keaton and Pat Hingle, I think. But it's just being totally unconcerned with a character that you're adapting from documented source material just seems like the wrong attitude to have when you are approaching any adaptation. You can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and expect things to be to have the essence of the characters you're adapting. And I understand there's a legion of Batman fans that love this movie to death, and I can understand that to a degree. Maybe Peter can convince me otherwise, but
not me, I guess.
If you don't follow the rules of adaptation, what's the point of adapting them in the first place? So the way that I've always characterized this movie is that it's a Tim Burton, Daniel Waters movie that happens to have Batman character names. To me, that's always been the most apt description.
Yep, that's exactly how I describe it.
I just feel like before, the Penguin didn't have any identity, really. He was just kind of like this chubby guy with an umbrella store, right? Like, this movie kind of gave him something. Like, I'd rather have him be a monster than a joke. I mean, No Man's Land really defined what the Penguin is, but we haven't reached that point yet. Like, this is pretty much like a fresh new thing.
That's a good point. At this time, I believe the studio was pretty heavy on forcing these villains, and that also shows the beginnings of Warner Brothers as a studio, where their priorities lied with their films. You know,
they saw Penguin as like a solid number 2.
Yeah, they wanted Penguin in this thing, and they wanted to start ramping up with the toys and stuff, which feeds into the demise of these initial 4 movies. And so,
I wonder what
was tasked with doing something. You know,
I wonder what fed that perception, because in the 60s show, if we're looking at the most prominent Batman adaptations that existed before, Penguin wasn't exactly number 2 in the 60s show. That was probably Frank Gorshin. So,
well, the Penguin was in probably tied with maybe the Joker for the most appearances in the show. And you look at the movie, it was, who was it? Penguin, Riddler, Joker, Catwoman.
That's true.
He'll knock into tomorrow.
And you get all 4 of those villains within the first three movies here.
I love doing Mickey dialogue with the Penguin laugh. It just makes me happy. It makes me, I don't know what makes me happy.
Well, as we're on the crane shot. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Peter.
No, Chris, you first.
Well, so we had the crane shot that was establishing the set. And one of the things that we had noted in the 89 commentary was the fact that they actually did build a large Gotham City set outdoors at Pinewood Studios. And although Bo Welch did an admirable job, this movie does very much look and feel like it's shot indoors. And it just kind of loses an element of the atmosphere that the production design partially makes up for. I don't want to try and give the impression that I think Bo Welch is bad at what he does. This and Thor both prove that he's not. But it does have a very lot shot feel to it that the original movie did not have.
A lot of it just takes place in like this city square, you know? We get that one rooftop scene with Batman and Catwoman, but everything pretty much happens in front of Shrek's.
Yeah. Well, a lot of scenes in Batman 89 take place around very similar scenes to, city landmarks
City
too.
Hall
But
and the Monarch.
I think part of it too was, since they wanted all this snow and climate controlled stuff, they put it all in a bunch of sound stages so they could have things like snow on the streets and stuff. And I think, was it this thing shot in the summer?
Yes. It was shot in Burbank. It took up pretty much the entire Warner Brothers backlot, all of the sound stages, and they had to hire a couple of sound stages at some other studios. I think Paramount and Universal was among them. But, just seeing the sky lends to an element of atmosphere that this movie just doesn't quite manage to replicate.
I went through a period
Go ahead.
I went through a period where I would constantly like just try to force myself to think of Shrek as Harvey Dent, and I felt like that made the movie slightly better when I was younger. Like, because the whole power plant thing is weird to me.
I like the painting in the background with he and Chip.
It is hilarious. It's a great touch, actually.
Chip being the worst character in this movie.
Yeah. Well, but just to go on the character,
Chip is like that guy in Charles in Charge, like the 80s surfer caricature. It's so bad. It's so bad.
Just production design wise, though, look at like the walls here. It's like a coffin almost, right?
No, that's very cool.
Pillows,
which is interesting because Max Schreck. Look at the source material of where that name comes from. It kind of makes sense.
Well, and I mean, I don't think anybody can diminish Tim Burton's visual artistry, at least not with much credibility. I mean, he knows how to construct a shot. He knows how to get world-class talent to create really, really memorable images, which this movie absolutely does have. And I mean, the only thing I'll say about Chip Shrek is that he is a terrible character, but at least the guy does a decent walking impression.
He does.
Dad.
This is Dad. Good. I love
Let's
it.
go. There you go. Dad.
Is that? I swear to God, that's like Nuclear Man's son, isn't it?
He was
I
Leatherface.
haven't thought of that till now.
I believe.
I'm never going to get that out of my head. Oh, and the great sexism scene. She makes a heck of a cup of coffee. Yeah. Oh, Selena. I tell you what, listen, I'm not a fan of this film, but every scene she's in, she just chews up. I love her in this movie. And there's going to be a lot of great moments that I'm looking forward to discussing because there are some positives here. See, to me, like right now, even they're exiting and just all the extras, just everything just seems so fake to me in this film. It just, everything seems stagey.
Yes.
Like, just look at the extras here. I mean, I know it seems minuscule, but it's just not. All this stuff matters, and just everything about this film, it just doesn't feel, that was my impression when I was watching it. I said, this is not the Gotham City that I fell in love with. This is not the Gotham. Remember the end of Batman 89? He's standing there and the bat signal shining. Like, I wanted to return to that Gotham, and we didn't get that.
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
Sadly, even if you read Sam Hamm's initial, commission script for Batman 2 at the time, that does not feel, if they made that script, I don't think that would have captured
buried treasure.
Batman 89.
Yeah. Well, and I think we're probably most feeling, if I were to guess anyway, the absence of Anton Furst. Because he was so pivotally responsible for the feel of Gotham, hell erupting from the streets, as we talked about in the last one. And this just has a fundamentally different aesthetic to it.
Look at everybody back there. You got Sammy Davis.
And Elvis?
Elvis, Bill Clinton.
That's the Nick. Isn't that the picture with Elvis? Wasn't that the Nixon picture that they just put him into? It looked like it.
Yeah, they Forrest Gump that one. All right. And as Shrek is giving his speech, Chris, you said a moment ago the way you were very perfectly explaining or describing Tim Burton, and he has a signature visual style. You can't deny that, even when you don't like his films. And to me, in a lot of ways, Tim Burton and Zack Snyder have a lot of similarities.
I wondered if you were going to bring that up because I too noticed those connections. Yeah,
absolutely. And the fact that they've made Batman films now even makes their correlation even more cohesive in my mind. And I have the same sort of opinion on Tim Burton and Zack. Like, the films of Tim and Zack I love. Watchmen, Big Fish, Batman 89,
so good.
Man of Steel, right? I can go down the list.
Ed Wood.
Ed Wood, and Ed Wood is probably his best film next to Big Fish. I'm not a fan of Edward Scissorhands, but I do. No, it's not that I don't like it. It's just, I don't know. I was at a weird age when it came out. I had a weird response to it, I think. I don't know why. I'd have to go back and revisit Edward Scissorhands. It's been years since I've seen it.
Well, now we come upon the Red Triangle Gang. It's weird that Burton couldn't get away from clowns.
I was about
Batman
to say
movies.
that. It's interesting that they go right back to the circus motif. Which,
by the way, I'm sorry, those motorcycle helmets, just real fast, you can see those in the prop department at the Warner Brothers studio tour if you ever go.
Cool.
Really?
Cool.
That's great.
Yep. It just made me think, like, with clowns again, with the circus motif again, it's almost interesting that they didn't try to put Robin in this thing, because that would have been an easy Well,
What is that?
place to put him.
What is his name? The actor?
Connections.
Oh, he's an old character actor. I can't remember what his
The
name
guy
is.
that plays him is Vincent Schiavelli.
Yeah, he was
that
great
how
in he was great in Ghost. Remember he was on the subway with Patrick Swayze and he was teaching him how to move everything. That's him.
He's
right?
in an episode of the X-Files too, I believe.
Yeah,
Now,
he
I
was
will
rewatching
say,
that.
I will say this on this part. I kind of love the idea that he is just waiting. You know, he's not doing anything. This Bruce Wayne is so neurotic and so driven that the only thing he can do is wait for his ludicrously designed bat signal to come into his study.
Hey, listen, but look, that's a cool scene.
Look at that shot.
Oh, sure.
too.
That's a
That
beautiful
is
shot
amazing.
there. It's a beautiful shot. There's elements obviously that feel like the '89 film.
Yeah.
At least they didn't
The
change
score
the
helps
car.
that too. Yeah.
Well, everything tied to the iconography of the bat, of the silhouette, of the character himself, are all impeccably designed. And if not for the tone and for the writing, it would represent that 90s era Batman really, because this does in a way, and I agree with Michael Uslan, who I think said it first, it kind of does evoke the more Dark Knight Returns obsessed era of the comics. Obviously, there are some serious fundamental differences, but it does kind of fall into that same kind of, I kind of want to say, mean-spirited era of Batman.
Yeah. Well, the more the years pass after this, the more you get into the a-hole Batman era of comics.
And what this poor guy doesn't know is this Batman will burn you alive for simply being an
He doesn't
arsonist.
get burned alive, Rick. He's walking around.
There's
with a
another
bomb.
connection, Rick.
Firefly doesn't get burned alive.
I gotta say, though, as a kid,
That's
I was
not
not
Firefly.
happy about that teddy bear burning. Not happy at all.
This
Yeah,
guy, if
and,
you're walking
you know,
around with
you gotta
fire,
give-
you know what you're doing.
Yeah. You got to give Michael Keaton credit too, because his Batman does not come across as like an imitation of the '89 Batman. Like, this is the same character. I don't think his performance is
He said he had a
matched
hard
to
time
89.
doing that though. Like he felt
I
like
know
he
he-
was copying
exactly.
himself.
which makes sense when he was filming this, but I think he succeeded.
Well, at least the car returns as well. I mean,
I like these guys on the car here. This is cool.
yeah,
And just the
bulletproof
look on
glass.
his face. Right.
I mean, that car, anytime that car is on screen, I'm going to smile. I mean,
Uh-oh.
It's still my favorite Batmobile.
Here we go.
comes-
It turns the car
Stop,
around.
drop, and roll, man.
the first act of sadism from Batman Returns Batman.
How cool is it that he's got this
I can do
turntable?
this.
You
though?
think Affleck was a murdering Batman? Look at that.
Burton
Holy
did it
cow.
first. Burton did it first.
That's an atrocious scene. Now, it makes up for it because this scene is awesome. I love everything about the scene. It's perfect.
Right here, yes. Like
Yes.
the dialogue and stuff. And I think there was
Everything.
I think Batman had some dialogue here in this scene, and then Keaton
insisted that
removed
it get cut. Yeah,
and it
I
makes
mean,
so much sense when he
Waters
doesn't
said
say
that in, like, the
anything.
DVD.
Okay, here we go. Mr. Batman. Hey, look, and just look at the way he's looking at her.
He's got a bat logo around his lips.
it's true.
Oh,
It's
look at
totally
that.
true.
And I love the way he cuts his eyes at her right here.
And by the way, that's really well represented in the Super Nintendo video game too. That's a fun
Oh, that's
part.
yes, absolutely.
But
The
I mean,
Batman.
Selena Kyle's reaction to this too. Her dialogue's great.
And I don't think he was referred to as the Batman once in '89, was he?
no, he wasn't.
I like her in her first interaction more than Meridian's first interaction.
And let me just say this, just to get the 800-pound gorilla and address him because he's staring at me. I really wish they didn't change the suit as much as they did. I much prefer the
I
suit. in
love
89.
the suit.
Really?
I love the suit.
I really
and
like
I
the
think
suit.
here's another thing too.
The
I
'89
think
suit was tough,
Especially like around the
sexy,
cheek
and-
areas.
Well, see, I think if they would have just straight used the '89 suit, it would not have even matched this new Batman Returns aesthetic that well. Also, I think
Well,
it matches it a lot
They could
better.
have changed it a little, but that's fine. Like the modifications are pretty drastic, though.
This is when they
89 looked
started
too
to
bulky
favor
at some points.
kind of a metallic blue. Like it kept getting more blue as each movie went on.
And here's
That's
the-
true. It's all blue by the time you get to Batman and Robin, for sure.
There's that great bonding relationship he has with Gordon. I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. Circus King is back.
Which
Well,
is a
and so-
shame because Pat Hingle had talked to interviews and he knew Gordon's backstory in and out, and he was just waiting for them to do it justice in a movie, and then they never did for him.
Well, at least he doesn't come out on the rooftop in his
I
pajamas.
love watching him climb the ladder.
I saw the signal. What's going on? Yeah. Well, and to the earlier point about Daniel Waters mentioning that Keaton, wanted more of his dialogue cut. Let me just say, thank God for Michael Keaton then, because if Daniel Waters was writing these long, vengeful diatribes for Batman to go on, then that would not have been positive at all. Because he never does that, at least not in truthful representations. But then, I catch myself because what are we watching?
All of this here at Arctic World, this is all Tim Burton.
So good.
Oh, yeah, totally.
This is
Just to bring it
100% Burton.
Just to bring it up real fast, though, last time in that scene, in that introduction scene, is that the only time in this movie where Batman uses his grapple gun?
Oh, God, it might
I'd
be.
say yes.
Which I think it is too, which is very interesting because he used it a bunch in Batman 89.
Oh, well, he uses the two-way in a couple of spots, but that's not specifically the grapple gun.
The museum one. That was one.
Where he goes from line to line down
So awful.
diagonally.
I love the over-the-top acting here. This is just... he gave the Penguin an identity. He was nothing before this.
He gave him an identity. I will give you that.
Well, the 60s Penguin's very well realized and a reflection of the time.
I
But
always
they couldn't have done that here.
I always thought what they did with him in the animated series was perfect because it was somewhat of a hybrid. Sure, because he had the flipper hands and everything, but he certainly wasn't a penguin man from the sewer spitting goo. He was still kind of gangster, And
He had that iceberg lounge effect to him.
yeah, iceberg lounge, just gangster. But he had the flipper hands. It was I like that.
That changed with new animated series, though. Then they went like traditional, like kind of like tuxedo human penguin.
Yeah.
I really wish we would have gotten a Nolan penguin, but
Yeah, me too.
conversation for another day.
It just highlights the different philosophies and adaptation that Paul Dini and Bruce Timm had compared to Burton and Daniel Waters. I mean, I absolutely agree, Peter, that Penguin didn't really have much of an identity in the source material to cull from necessarily, but at the very least, it just seems like when there is an absence of something in the source material, the first instinct for this pair to go to was like monstrous. Like they decided to make it literal.
Yeah.
And, it works for some people and it doesn't work for others.
And I think on one hand, that's what they wanted to do because that is a very Tim Burton-y thing, like a weird freak monster kind of guy. And that's a
Eating raw
motif
fish.
and that's a motif that shows up in a lot of his other movies as well. Like he just did Edward Scissorhands, for example, and Beetlejuice. I mean, it's very in that same vein.
And they're all pale guys with like these black eyes. They all look the same.
But what's interesting is I think in some regard, and I know there's a better story underneath all this, but I think part of the cool part about the way they approach Penguin's character in Batman Returns is that Penguin is the real monster, Batman is pretending to be a monster, and Catwoman is kind of in the middle too. It's caught between both of the things. And I think that's kind of was Burton's idea of like, how do I split up and have these different character points for these animal people? So I kind of like that part of it.
Well, there's even the great line, and I'm going to paraphrase, and we'll talk about it when it comes up, but he says something to Batman. He's like, you're just jealous because I'm a genuine freak,
exactly.
and you have to wear a mask. And that's a great line.
It's one of the better scenes in the film, I'd say.
It's a great
We got
line.
our first goose sighting.
Yeah.
There it is.
And I think I believe this was Danny DeVito's idea, was it not?
The black
To do the goo?
I don't know.
I heard
That's
that
the
was
first
his
I've heard
idea.
So awful.
So this stuff is apparently stuff that he flushed down the toilet, right?
I don't know if the Batmobile instructions got flushed down the toilet, man.
And all the circus gang stuff, it's like all synchronized like a bad music video.
Silver
tell
Surfer,
you
Doug
what.
Jones is one of them.
That's true. And this is one of his first, I guess.
The Bye Bye Man.
Yeah.
He's had a bunch of crazy roles like that.
You know what's fun is that I have the audiobook version of Batman Returns on not videotape, but on audio tape. And I recently digitized it so I can listen to it for the first time ever. And it's really funny because it's read by the actor that plays the mayor in this film. And his penguin is just hilarious. He sounds like a New York gangster, and it's just kind of amazing because it doesn't sound like Danny DeVito at all. So
Wait, so he reconstructed that stuff from the toilet, and I guess so he chopped up his buddy Fred, right, and flushed his whole hand down the toilet, his intact hand.
Well, I think as we see, and here's one of the only plot things that I don't like in the film. It's established later on that Shrek is not very good at covering up what he does. Like, after what happens to Selena, he doesn't even try to get rid of her body or do something with anything. Like, she just shows up the next day and he's just like, oh, how is she still alive? And I'm like, are you telling me you didn't even go try to cover it up or see what happened? Like, he just left her there? Like, it's very strange.
He sent the cats out to eat her.
It's very strange.
That's it. He sent the cats. Something had to have
happened. Cats. You know, I mean, he's got the logo of her store.
See, the only thing that I took from that is that he's just a greedy, arrogant bastard. That's pretty much what I took. Like, oh, she fell out the window. Okay.
But production design wise, I love seeing, like, this is a cool introduction to Selena Kyle and what her life is like. And look, she's even got like Shrek department store bags and stuff. Like, it's very well realized. And of course, it's got this muted pink kind of thing, because it kind of represents like, well, this is what everybody thinks a woman should be or a girl should be, or is she trapped in this, she doesn't really know what kind of woman she is kind of vibe, where it's just like, I guess this is what I should be doing with my life, but it's very empty for her. And it's interesting
a good job of emphasizing mediocrity. I think that's what they're...
Yeah, and it's cool to see how... And they do a good job of establishing a lot of this stuff before she completely trashes it later on in the film.
I like the hello there and what she does with that later.
Yeah.
Hell here.
Yeah.
That's fun. But look at that. She's got a dry cleaning in the background. So a lot of good attention to detail.
It's a nice size apartment.
Just kind of pulls you into her daily life. It's well made. It is. Oh, answering machines, how I miss thee. How many great movies?
The rotary phone.
But just, think about Swingers. Remember when he keeps checking his answering machine and you hear his voicemail? Just fundamentally changes filmmaking now. Sucks. Cell phones have ruined everything, guys.
And, I mean, as good as... Because Pfeiffer is one of the demonstrably better parts of this movie. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I just kind of wonder what the philosophy was in bringing Catwoman in this way, because this is one of those instances where it's like, okay, so she's going to get the costume later, but there are a lot of truly stark differences between this Catwoman, or this Selena Kyle, really,
right,
and the one that we know, which just goes back to the philosophy of adaptation, if there was one.
Right. Now, in the comics at the time, at the comics in the time, weren't there quite a few Catwoman origins also to pull from? Like, you had the year one version, which a lot of people don't like. We had just the Jewel Thief version. And I think even the Sam Hamm original script had her Catwoman being she was like a killer, straight up killer or something in that. I'm not sure how faithful that would have been either.
Trying to remember when her ongoing series in the 90s first premiered.
I believe that was 93 during Nightfall.
This is actually really good.
The first volume of which actually just came out this week.
Oh, really?
Paperback, yeah.
They collected it.
Yeah, the Jim Ballant artwork. Yep. It's like first 13 issues or something you can get.
And let's face it, this scene right here is strong. It's uncomfortable to watch.
It is. And I think the lighting
so creepy.
Yeah. And the lighting here, I think, was kind of a mistake at first, but they kept it and they liked it because of the way that the glasses, the light right there, you see how the light bounces off her head. They kept it because they thought that was cool.
I can just feel the tension.
And Michelle Pfeiffer, I think she just does such a good job, even with what she's given. And as in a mirror to Batman 89, she came in quite late, like very close to shooting time, because
it was Annette Bening, right?
It was Annette Bening, and she got pregnant, and they had to get somebody to fill in at first, and they thought it would be weird, like she was cast, and then it was like, oh, she used to be in a relationship with Michael Keaton. It's like, is this going to be weird? And then they kind of just did it anyway, or and I think it might have even helped their chemistry in the film, because I think it's very strong once she gets to meet Batman, or she's already met Batman. But
And right here, when he messes with her a little bit,
Everything's for Chip. He's so important. Everything is done for Chip.
Prince of Gotham, Chip Shrek.
Justin has to make a Chip Shrek t-shirt. I'm begging him to. I hope he does that.
It's a lot like that. It's a great
Her eyes are kind of bloodshot. Did you notice that?
Yeah, she's tired. Yeah. She's stressed out. Yeah. She's living on coffee that she makes really well.
Yeah, her own coffee.
Huh?
That laugh.
You know, the thing that's bone-chilling to me, though, is his face as he's pushing her. Like, I paused it there one time, and it's just like...
It'll give you nightmares.
Vicious.
Falling through cat logos.
Oh, yeah, that for a brief second, it's just like a... Urgh.
See, I never thought here she got cat powers. I just thought they woke her up because she's just knocked out. You know? She's got a concussion. She's unconscious. Things are biting me. I think I'm going to wake up.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's left up to interpretation here, but then if you go by the Halle Berry Catwoman movie, then it's clear that it gives her cat powers.
I've never seen
the cats right here. They're right there. They breathe the cat powers in just like in the Halle Berry movie.
I mean, I certainly never thought that it gave her powers, but the entire thing is a little too mystical for my taste, just because, I mean...
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
Would cats...
Cats
really do
this is a great time to have our first Instagram question, which is from Luis M. Jesus 13. He says, Michelle Pfeiffer did a great performance in my opinion. However, do you guys think that this version of Catwoman was way too far off of what the character is?
Yes.
I love it, but it's out there, man, like Pluto.
Ooh, and she gets her fingers bit. That freaked my sister out as a kid.
The eyes.
And apparently she did that all. That's not an effect. Pfeiffer did that herself. That eye.
Again, she's extraordinarily talented.
And she swallowed that whole bird too.
I think once she is Catwoman, I think she's Catwoman. But everything else around it, yeah, it's a little extreme. But
it seems like they're going with the motif that okay, so Shrek didn't succeed in killing her, but he killed a part of her, and what's left over is Catwoman.
Mm-hmm. Batman Figs asked, would you put Pfeiffer's performance as Catwoman up there with the likes of Ledger's performance in The Dark Knight? Because to me, the transformation scene in the apartment is one of the better Batman universe moments I've seen. Seeing her destroy her old life and innocence to become Catwoman, it seldom gets that good for me.
It's an interesting perspective.
Personally, I love
she's
it.
very, very good in this film.
Yeah.
This scene here is what scarred me as a child. Like me and my brother, when she freaks out and she stuffs the stuffed animals down the garbage disposal, like that's the gooey penguin, all that stuff, nothing. But this bothered me, my brother, like nothing else. This like her freak out scene. I mean, and it was that good.
A freak out scene is a good way to put it. But for me as a kid, as a 4-year-old, this is the first time I think I was exposed to what a mental breakdown looks like, which is very interesting way to put it in a Batman movie. But
this scene gave us Batman Forever, by the way.
Oh,
I think you're right.
I said in the beginning, I'm totally the reason for Batman Forever.
Just imagine like a whole crowd of people in a theater. Like, is it around here where either you're on board or you're completely not on board?
And Walters has said he like sometimes relishes in the fact that this freaks people out and they left the theater out crying. Like he said he loved it.
Like, he would sit in the back and just kind of been like, yeah, that got him. Yeah.
Yeah, that got him. So where does it go from here? I'll get drive-through. That's where it goes.
That's where it goes. But you know,
Batman gets drive-through.
This is one of my favorite Danny Elfman pieces of music ever. I love Selina's transformation score here.
It does inspire a lot of a lack of comfort, I guess. I mean, it's very like it's designed to be kind of off base and tragic that you're seeing this. I don't know if the imagery kind of justifies the tragedy. I mean, if you watch this fresh without necessarily an attachment to the characters as they were presented in the original material, I genuinely am not sure how someone would take a scene like this in its totality with what we're seeing, with the music, because they're communicating, it seems, kind of very different things, because it's, in a way, it's liberating, but it's also presented as kind of tragic. So it's very unique. Can't take that away from it.
Yeah, it is pretty complex what they're trying to, make happen here. Belvedere.
And I mean, like you said, Rick, I mean, she's owning this, right? She is just totally...
She's chewing it up.
She's totally chewing it up.
She's chewing it up, everything.
That one jacket had enough material for a whole bodysuit.
It's a big jacket.
It's cool seeing her make all this stuff. Like watching her make her cat suit.
Now,
Batman
from here
Begins,
on,
eat your heart out. Burton did it first.
Here on out, I love every scene she's been.
Yeah,
For the
she's
most part.
Catwoman. She's Catwoman.
Right. From here on out. I even love her stuff when she's Selena at Wayne Manor.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the scene at the dance later. Oh, man.
I love that scene.
One of the best scenes in a Batman film ever.
I agree.
Until that damn duck ruins it.
Yep.
I have that Hot Wheels duck. It has the little Hot Wheels, like, car duck. I have that thing. I love that thing. Did we see a lot of like these like giant male sculptures in '89? I feel like it happened in Returns, and then it went crazy in Batman Forever and BNR.
Yeah,
like they became like these almost building-like structures that were holding bridges and stuff at some point.
Well, then if in Batman and Robin, you get a full-on action scene driving on the arm of
one of the fingers as a ramp.
Yeah, or it's holding up the the planetarium.
Was that Ernest?
Jim Varney. No.
Was that Jim Varney?
Love Jim Varney. Jim Varney's so good.
Like Knox couldn't have been like sprinkled in here a little bit.
Yeah, see,
like one of these guys.
That's a big regret of mine. I really wish Knox could have.
He wouldn't have
been
fit.
In this film. What? There's a lot of goofy stuff in this film.
I love him. What I'm saying is that it's not.
Knox was goofy,
but it's not his Gotham. Is what I'm saying. Like it would have just been weird.
Well, you have the same Batman. You have Alfred. You have Vicky Vale's mentioned.
I feel like that guy with the glasses is a reporter that's in the movie a lot, and I'm just like, I wish you were Knox.
Well, it's a good thing that both the duck extend upward, and apparently there's an extending platform below his feet on the duck.
Even as a kid, I was like, how did this work?
Movie
and does it not make it the most obvious setup ever if he has the baby and he's being lifted up to deliver it? Right?
You would think so.
Well, you heard in the sewer.
Where
the hideous penguin man. And
Shrek right next to him immediately. Terrible. I do like how Bruce is kind of like sympathetic here for him, though. He's like, I kind of feel you. I kind of want you to find your parents.
Yeah. Especially.
And then Alfred like slowly turns through the course of the movie. He's like forgiving, and the more he sees of the penguin, he like hates him. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I hope you find your parents, and I really hope your mother's name is Martha.
Why did you say that name?
That fireplace is gigantic too.
Yeah, so is that tree.
Alfred did that all himself.
Joy.
Is it a little effed up too that Bruce just lets Alfred do everything? Like
maybe Alfred wants to. Maybe that's just his thing.
Got to stay busy, man.
The Joker. Period asks us, do you think the Penguin will be in another Batman film ever?
Yes.
I think he has to be.
Absolutely he will be. I mean, they reference him. He's alluded to.
That's true in Justice League.
Justice League, yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly hope so. To me, the most definitive Penguin story that I've ever read came out, I think it was about 5 years ago. It wasn't too long after the New 52 started. And it was called Penguin, Pain and Prejudice.
Yep.
It's written by Greg Hurwitz with art by Szymon Kudranski, I think is how you pronounce his name. And some of Gotham's Penguin was inspired by it. Not enough of it, unfortunately. But
they even go early
Penguin
on to
story.
his origin, his childhood and stuff, don't they?
Yeah,
In
they
that
do.
story.
And they make the relationship with his mother a centerpiece of it in a way that's very satisfying, in the way that he treats people under him. And there was also a really good, do you remember when they were doing those Joker's Asylum one-shots in 2008-9? There was a Penguin one-shot that was written by none other than Jason Aaron, who's Marvel's main Thor guy right now, and he's writing the ongoing Star Wars series. Wrote a really great Vertigo series that I love called The Other Side, which I think was his first work in comics. And that was a really, really great just one-shot with the Penguin that I think is nigh on definitive. So there's plenty of great material, in addition to the fact that Oswald Cobblepot is one of Gotham City's most notorious crime bosses. He has to be touched on again, if for no other reason than so people can see what crime boss Penguin really looks like in a movie.
Things I've wanted to eat thanks to Batman movies: lobster thermidor and whatever this dish is.
Vichyssoise.
Yeah, this cold dish.
It's vichyssoise. It's supposed to be cold.
Again, this is the second Burton Batman film that involves soup. In Batman 89, it was
soup.
warm soup, and this one it's cold.
How's the soup? Can you pass the salt?
That extra long table.
And I love how after he starts eating the soup, he kind of likes it.
Can
or
we just
tolerates it?
let's just start talking about Batman 89 again. I'm kidding.
That's good. Here's a good shot. This is like the first time we've really seen the Batcave in this film, and as you can see, there have been some upgrades with it. I prefer the Batman Returns Batcave. He looks a little bit more settled, has some better equipment. Alfred has more of a presence in here. I think this is a cool thing here. Like you just see in Batman media, Alfred hanging out in the Batcave, working through something with Bruce. I think that's pretty awesome.
You know, I will say this: there hasn't been. There's great Bruce Wayne Alfred scenes in every Warner Brothers Batman film. Even in Batman and Robin, there's a great Bruce Wayne and Alfred scene when he's sick and he's talking to him.
I love the subtle change in Keaton's voice when he talks to Alfred when he's wearing the mask. It's so powerful. It's not as crazy as Bale's. It's not as modulated as Affleck's. You know, it's really his voice.
For me, the best Bat voice is Bell in Begins. Aside from that, it's Keaton.
And I think Chris would agree with this. My favorite Bale performance with the voice is in the Batman Begins video game.
I love that.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, I really like that, just the part where he drives by closely.
Yeah.
Because it kind of emphasizes a slight Guardian element that you don't really get from, because really, when you come down to it, one of my most fundamental gripes with this movie is that Batman doesn't do a lot of things that you can categorize as being heroic. Mm-hmm. But I like the idea that he is always watching. When some big event comes up that might garner his attention, he will give it. And that I appreciate.
This, I believe, is this not the tombstone that wobbles for a second when he touches
it might be.
Oh, there it goes.
So bad.
Cardboard.
I never noticed that till now.
I would say you ruined the movie for me, but you know.
Let's see. Tabs3121 asks, which Elfman score do you think was better, 89 or Returns?
I'm going to say 89, and the reason I'm going to say it is because so much of the music that I absolutely love in Returns, it's juxtaposed with a scene that I have disdain for. And I'm not trying to be funny when I say that. That's just an honest answer.
No,
now,
that's a good answer.
Empirically speaking, I think Returns has a more in-depth score, but it's just the scenes that correspond with it that bring it down for me.
I'll say I think 89 is the better score, but I personally like Returns more. I just like all the extra Elfman-y things, you know?
I do like all these 90s, like, kind of grungy people here. It's awesome. Because that's how old I was. I was 17 when this came out. I looked like that guy with the long hair, actually.
Yeah. Son of Martha asked a similar question. Do you think Batman Returns has the best soundtrack of any Batman film to date? It's up there for me. And for the last question, I do think it's my favorite out of the two Burton films, and I do think it's better than Batman 89 just because I think Elfman used all the things to his advantage that he learned from Batman 89, but enhanced them in this one. And I like the fact that he's got very distinctive themes for, Batman, the Penguin, and Catwoman, and they all work separately and they all work intertwined together. And I think it just made it stronger to me, those thematic elements.
It feels more personal.
It does. Like, I couldn't tell you that the Joker had a very specific, memorable theme in Batman 89, and I think that's something that is explored a little bit better in Returns.
That was the lady who said he's like a frog that became a prince. That was Bob Kane's wife.
Yep. Gossip Gertie.
Gossip Gertie.
Technically, that is Gossip Gertie, if you want to be blunt about it, because these are the same continuity. So
I like how she goes from heels to flats in this scene. That's the thing about Catwoman I like, even in Rises, I paid attention to it.
This guy looks like Stephen Pearcy to me. Is that Stephen Pearcy? Is that actually who that is? The lead singer from Rat. I need to look that up. I swear to God, it looks just like him.
This freaked me out as a kid where she scratches his face. I'm like, oh my God, he can't see now because his eyes are scratched to death.
Okay, that's not Stephen Pearcy, but man, he looks like him.
I always thought that this guy was the guy she referenced when she's talking to Bruce Wayne.
I did too.
I always got to figure that was him.
What specifically are you referring to?
What's his name? Like Richie Friedberg or something like that?
He's dead now.
Yeah. It's when she makes her big re-entrance and when he's struck, like she's taking a vacation time. It's right here. It's coming up.
You do see Bruce. Look, here he is, walking around during the day, and he's not going to visit his parents' grave. He's just going to a business meeting. He's a little bit more of a man of the world here.
This is one of my favorite scenes in the film, too, just because of that reason, Rick, because we get to see Keaton's Bruce Wayne in a non-Batman, non-Bruce Wayne, function. He's doing like a normal day businessman type of thing, but he still makes it compelling.
Well,
this is Wayne Enterprises Bruce right here.
Well, see, that's the thing, because we talked about this in the last commentary. We don't really know what Bruce does in the first two movies, because Wayne Enterprises isn't mentioned until Batman Forever.
Trust
fund. They don't actually mention
exactly.
They don't actually mention specifically what his function is. And he's obviously a person of prominence. Right. But we don't really know, okay, what do you do exactly besides brood in your giant house?
And it would have been a good juxtaposition to put in this film because they have a lot of focus on Shrek, a corporate businessman. Look at the big Shrek department store. You could have easily juxtaposed that with Wayne Enterprises, Didn't
you ever think it was weird how, like, Bruce Wayne's like, I'll prove that Cobblepot's in control of the Red Triangle Gang. Like, why? You're at a business meeting. Like, where did that come from? It's like, you're kind of like, you're showing your cards here. It's like, why are you being a detective? Are you Batman? I don't know.
To me, it just showed that his drive as Batman was kind of bleeding over into his Bruce Wayne personal life.
It's interesting that they didn't do anything in this scene to hide how much taller Christopher Walken is from Michael Keaton.
Yeah, they just kind of go with it in the whole film too. Like, and I love looking at Michael Keaton's just facial expressions as he looks at Selena and kind of he just instantly kind of enamored with her.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah,
I mistook me for somebody else.
Yeah, and that ties right into the whole like he's just kind of not associating. He's Batman here, but he's trying real hard to be Bruce Wayne, but it's just kind of failing him at this moment.
This is where all his great comedic timing came in. Oh, what happened? I'm going to explore this. Tell me.
The nun story was always weird to me.
And this is the same thing too. This is what I was saying earlier. Like wow, she just kind of shows up at work, and it shows Chip being like, "Oh, how'd this happen?" But how did this happen? How did Max Schreck let this happen? Like, did he not go look for her when she fell off the...
What does he say later? It's a kind of a funny line. He says, she tries to double cross
out a window.
Yeah, tries to double cross me. I'll just drop her out of a window. I got bigger fish to fry. Well, it's just so bad, but it's pretty great though.
Keaton does play this really nicely. Because when she's explaining that, if you watch his face, he's just like got an almost smile. His mouth is hanging open like he's just in awe. And it kind of sets up the idea that they are enamored with each other regardless of the fact that they're wearing masks or not.
Yeah.
But I mean, I try to think, because the relationship between Bruce and Selina as it was explored in The Dark Knight Rises, I mean, it's certainly very different. There's not like that, I don't know, what would you call it, animal magnetism between the both of them that there is in this one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
but I would say that the common thread between the two is Selina representing a future for Bruce, or a normal life, which, doesn't happen in this movie, obviously, but it kind of does happen in Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, I didn't get that impression. That's interesting.
Well, just like later in this movie when they're at the final confrontation and Batman takes off his mask and he's like, we can be together. And
yeah, I guess that's true. It's just kind of one-sided in this one, whereas in Rises, it's a little more shared.
It is.
Kind of.
But it's interesting for this Batman to almost be pleading with Selina to be like, let's not do this. I don't care. Let's be together and let's stop this.
She's so powerful in his presence that she can actually have black eye makeup come off his eyes without him having just disappear.
They should have just went with that. Just had the makeup on. That would have, cause everything else in that scene is so raw. It would have worked.
That just kind of lends itself to that staging that you were talking about earlier, Rick. It's just by design, even if it's glaring.
It's like that purple stain.
This is where he pulls the fish out. All right, guys, I'm going to go pour a whiskey. I'll be right back. I literally
love watching him eat this fish.
I can't watch this scene. It's
this is great.
Ridiculous.
As a kid, it freaked me out again because I'm like,
I loved everything about this.
Did he really eat that fish? Who could do that? Who eats raw fish? And of course,
that must have been
stupid sushi.
Exactly.
I think the fact that he's eating raw fish isn't my problem. It's how he was
grunting.
It was the grunting and how he was
here after it happened.
I would say this whole scene here is probably the most Batman Returns-y scene in Batman Returns.
Oh yes,
you could say, well, why don't you like Batman Returns? If somebody asked you that, you could probably show them this scene, and I think they'd get it.
It is, but I mean, look at that campaign poster. The concept, it's 60s. It's 60s Batman dipped in an inkwell. That's what it, totally. But I mean, it's that 60s concept that has all of the colors sucked out of it, and it's returned as a zombie biting people in the face.
There's so many great one-liners here.
I use that line with my wife all the time. The still could be worse. My nose could be gushing blood. For whatever reason, we use that all the time.
I'll say French flipper trick, and people are like, wait, what's that mean? And I'm like, I actually don't even know.
Oh, she's brilliant. God, she's brilliant. I miss her to death.
Yeah.
How does she expect to get that on his hand?
What's the line there? Voters like fingers.
Yeah.
I guess that the flippers don't match 2 votes.
Yeah, Jan Hooks, who was brilliant on Saturday Night Live and Third Rock from the Sun, plays her, and she had great comedic timing. She was like when she leans in and says hi, and then she does that little jolt and then here's the bite, of course. You can't not talk about the bite. But no, I love Jan Hooks.
Man. Oh my goodness.
That shot of him in that leotard right there. It's so...
And even though there's weird stuff in this scene, I watch it and I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't think anybody else could have done this interpretation of the Penguin than Danny DeVito. I can't think of anybody who
no one could
pull this off.
Nobody. Didn't get that joke until I was probably 22.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Little.
Isn't it funny how there's like so many of those out there and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. This is a great time for Andy Luca's question. Why did Tim Burton decide to make the Penguin so horny? And I don't think it's necessarily Tim Burton. I think it's the writing. For some reason, it's like, let's make Penguin weird.
And gross.
Gross, yeah.
At one
I
point,
guess-
he talks about oil and lotion with Catwoman. It's like, oh God.
Yeah. I'm guessing that it's just because in Daniel Waters' mind, whose hairstyle kind of resembles the Penguin's here, that he's just thinking, well, if a guy grew up in the sewer, maybe he would have repressed thoughts that manifested in extremely creepy and misogynistic ways.
Yeah.
I mean, that poodle lady likes him, right? She does that with him a lot.
Not an image I wanted to have, Peter, but thanks.
Which is interesting because later in the film, it's kind of muddled in terms of his backstory. It's almost like, well, was he always in the sewer? But I don't think so, right? Like he was part of the circus and then they did something. And then like, how long has he really been in the sewer? Like, did he?
I don't know.
He
He talks about early wanting to reemerge. I don't think that's...
Yeah, but I think that was kind of BS too. The way that things happened later in the film.
I
Seems
will
like
say
he already
this.
knew what he was going to do.
When the midterms roll around next year, I got to get an Oswald Cobblepot campaign shirt. I got to get a I Believe in Harvey Dent campaign shirt.
Yeah.
Got to get all that stuff.
Burn, baby, burn. Oh God.
And
Burn, baby,
How's
burn.
that dog pull that pin out?
This is another murdering scene here.
see, you know, if I'm being honest with myself, this might be my favorite scene in the movie for no other reason than we just get to see Batman
In
be
action.
Batman. You know, I mean, the remote control Batarang is a little hokey with the way
I
it's
never-
constructed.
It screams like 90s. Ooh, we have CG. We can do something. But
Right,
I still
yeah.
like it.
What is he even pushing when he hits those buttons? It's like so random.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I
mean-
think Michael Keaton just like did whatever, and they just kind of made it make sense. But this is cool. I like seeing this.
I do like
Batman
this
fight
The
people.
uppercut into the stomach had a great sound effect that just made it sound like he's cracked 5 ribs with that
Yeah.
punch.
Yeah.
Some of this is a little reminiscent of the alley scene in '89, which was cool.
Yeah. I mean, this is really the only moment, kind of in both of the movies, where we get to see Batman take some hoods on. So, on that basis alone, I like it a lot.
Well,
I
like
mean-
we pointed out in the '89 movie, like there are a surprising amount of fight scenes in that film where Batman just beats the crap out of people, all the Joker goons and stuff. Like,
By the way, that dog jumped maybe 6 inches in the air, and he still managed to catch the Batarang.
Like that Batarang was like eye high and then went down ankle, you know?
And it was going like 300 miles an hour, and then suddenly...
Yeah.
The cat logo.
Batman's going to defuse that bomb responsibly
Yes, he
and
is.
not use it for any nefarious purposes.
That's
That's
where
right.
we are going to get to the first Twitter comment that I received. But I'll wait for it.
I love this shot. Catwoman behind the Shrek's cat logo. And look at this. I mean, a lot of this stuff Michelle Pfeiffer did for real. Like all this whip stuff she's about to do, she did it herself, which is very commendable.
I would not like to have to handle a bullwhip in heels. That seems really difficult.
Yeah.
Vacuum sealed suit.
Yeah.
The suit's great. She looks great in it.
Yeah.
I like when she jump ropes. It's like one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, there's a weird sinister cuteness to it. But
Sure.
then, you know,
It almost feels very Harley, doesn't it?
kind of,
Like
yeah.
Harley Quinn doing something like that.
That's great. It's great fun. And then the 2 worst day player actors ever walk in.
It's like they stepped out of the back room of the Maltese Falcon. I don't know what open fire or fall in love there, sweetheart.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, so probably one of my I like the Wilhelm scream. That's always good to see, especially in a Batman movie. But of course, we come upon the big guy, and this is the first Twitter comment that I received from none other than Mr. Paul Herman. Why did Batman kill that goon? Batman doesn't kill. And of course, leave it to Paul. And Paul and I have quite a history together. We've been podcasting together for 6-7 years now. Leave it to Paul to pare down one of my core fundamental issues with this movie that a lot of Batman fans have. Yeah. Batman blatantly committing murder.
Yeah.
And I know that some people probably rolling their eyes, but I mean...
No, it's valid. It's one of Bill's big problems too, but...
I mean, that's murder.
That is murder.
Yeah,
My ever so slight counterpoint is he did the same stuff in the first movie. He killed a bunch of people in that too.
All right, I like the scene. This is the best scene between Batman and Penguin.
It is because it's like fully formed Batman, fully formed, the
battle is
closed Penguin. Yeah. We had another question here from Benjamin Clark. The one thing I miss about Returns that hasn't seemed to exist in subsequent Batman films is the fantasy element of Gotham. I like realism, but I would also like to see more of an embrace of the absurdity and almost Shakespearean quality of the characters that reside there. I always thought the things change interaction was great. What are your thoughts?
I think it's great too.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's the best scene in the film.
Like the dialogue works, the emotions, the acting here.
So tense. And
they
then
play
she
off
breaks the
each other
tension.
very well. Yeah, totally. And here's the look again from Keaton that he also had in the boardroom when he comes upon her.
Yeah, good call.
Bat in the headlights, so to speak. But no, I mean the scene between them just then, you always have to have, at least in most great Batman stories that I've been exposed to, you've got to have a little bit of a tete-a-tete between the primary hero and the primary villain. And that scene definitely provides that moment in this movie.
Right.
So, with all of the other things that there are to criticize in Batman Returns, I don't really see how that can be one of them.
Yeah. I love this as a kid, by the way. Like, the helicopter, umbrella. I love that.
Well, there's that sinister playfulness again before this fateful meeting. I would have loved to have seen what the lot was like for this set. I mean,
apparently, Michelle got lost all the time because they just kept shifting it.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me at all.
So in Entertainment Weekly, I remember doing a little preview of this film. It was the very first thing I saw. They actually showed this whole sequence here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
And I was just so excited for it because this is such a great scene. And I think right about here is where they cut it, where she kicks him.
Yeah, and you see that in context, and I'm sure at the time you'd be like, "Oh, this looks great! It's Batman and Catwoman fighting on a rooftop,"
and it still does. This scene's fantastic.
And I like how it transitions from Batman being enamored to, like not trying to hurt her to, okay, I'm going to fight back. I mean, a lot of that kind of stuff. That's the Batman-Catwoman relationship in a lot of ways.
Now, what exactly did he throw out?
There's Shreks in the background.
Napalm, I believe.
Because they say napalm,
he says it.
But I mean, it looks more like acid. It looks like it burns like napalm, but it's like Batman just running around with either napalm or corrosive acid in his utility belt. Doesn't seem like preserving life is at the forefront of his concerns.
Let me ask you this, Rick. And although we've said like, man, Catwoman looks great, the costume looks great, at the time, were people down with this, like, stitched together look? Was that like, yeah, that looks like Catwoman? Or was it like, man, that looks that's way too different?
There was, not in my bubble, were there any complaints about her at all? Zero. Even at the time, I think everybody kind of dug the way she came about, so to speak. But in terms of her overall aesthetic and her costume, the way she looked and everything, no, there was nothing like that. And in fact, to so many people, Catwoman is essentially Julie Newmar, Eartha Kitt. It's from the TV show. 90% of the people that go to see these films have never even read a comic book.
Yep.
So as far as comic book purism, it's interesting with her because you alluded to this earlier, Ryan, is that where is her definitive origin really? And this was this was being filmed in 90-91. And where was Catwoman at in the comics in 90-91?
Well, she didn't even have her like thigh high purple suit yet. Like I don't even know what she really looked like, comic book Catwoman. To be
It was
honest,
probably all over the place. You had your year one, right?
Yeah, we were only a couple of years out from year one at this point. So that was probably the prevailing origin story for the time. But, I mean, really, yeah, there's no core definitive origin. But really, Catwoman is a character who's not necessarily defined as much by her origin as much as what she would do later. Like, Batman is a little different, right? The murder that he was exposed to as a child set him on a definitive course to becoming what he would ultimately become. And it doesn't really count as much with a character like Catwoman. Her environment determined the direction that she would go in, but it didn't really set a lot of specific elements of how she would choose to conduct herself.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, I would actually argue the same thing for Superman, but that's a whole other conversation.
Oh, he sure likes his women, doesn't he?
Oh boy.
I do think
He's
it's
going to
interesting
pin
how
a
he-
button right on her. Oh my goodness.
See, when I was a kid, the only thing
How do
I
you do
thought
that?
of was like, that might hurt her. Jeez.
that's the French flipper trick.
Okay.
That's what that is.
That has to be. Because as a kid, I was like, how did he put the button on her? And by the way, I thought it was very cool how they threw a Joker reference in just a minute or two ago.
See, now my perception was that it was always a Joker reference, but the more I thought about it, maybe he's just referring to the Red Triangle Gang.
I don't know.
It's hard to tell because it could be either one. There's so little reference to the previous movie in this, except for, later on when there's an explicit one between Bruce and Alfred. But
To me, it is the Joker because of two things. Because they do mention Vicky later, and because his next comment is juxtaposed with Catwoman, as if we've got this Catwoman nuisance, and before that we had the Joker. So to me, it always meant that it was the Joker, but you might be right.
And I'm just going to come out and say it. This is pretty hot. Just saying, it is. It's supposed to be, and it's mission accomplished. She's very seductive here.
I love this.
Yeah.
So ridiculous.
And notice her. I mean, this is the second iteration of the costume, if you will, where it's starting to come apart at the seams. Which,
So is she.
so is she. Exactly.
see, this is kind of where it starts to lose it for me more specifically because, I mean, as committed as it is to being kind of a blatant, hero versus villain type of story, this is kind of a microcosm of everything that this movie goes for in the sense that its characters of focus are the villains. I mean, ultimately, that's what I found so very satisfying about the Nolan films is that those movies were about Bruce Wayne, and these movies really aren't. And as a Batman fan, I mean, I like the villains because I love Batman. So getting away from him as the primary core character from a perspective, from, the primary perspective, and as the person that the movie is fully about, these movies, all four of the original movies, really kind of come short.
They absolutely do. And that's also one of the reasons that Nolan chose more ambiguous characters or villains for Batman Begins to make sure that a villain did not overshadow what the whole story was really about, which was Bruce Wayne's journey.
Mm-hmm.
But,
They had a very specific function to what Bruce Wayne's journey was at in terms of his career as Batman too.
Right. But, without these films, we wouldn't have had, people say that Batman and Robin is sort of was the catalyst for Batman Begins. And quite frankly, I think this film was. This is where I take it back to, is Batman Returns. This set the trajectory for change.
Yeah.
For worse.
That's a great way to put it.
But eventually landed in the right spot.
Batman Returns and Superman Returns caused drastic changes for decades.
Superman Returns is a far superior film to this, though, in my opinion.
I really do
Don't-
love Superman Returns.
The best thing out of Superman Returns was the crazy kryptonite goo toy. I've got a bunch of that left over.
That was a hard movie for me, Peter. It really was. That was a hard movie for me to go see.
Returns? Superman Returns?
for sure.
See, for me, I mean, '06, I was just a kid. Oh man, right after Begins, I was ready to go. I was like, yes, I get to see a Superman movie in theaters. Like, I was
so excited.
Yeah.
I was reading
excited for
it.
that video game.
It's a true story, man.
Did you enjoy your fight with the tornado?
They were seeking unknowns, and I was in the running. It was crazy when the day that Brandon Routh was announced too, because it was a bartender from Iowa, and we're like, who the hell is this guy?
He looked good in that suit, man.
But when you see the film, you see that they were just paying homage to Chris Reeve, and he was the perfect person to do it. It's unfortunate the film just didn't work. There's Bruce eating his carrots. Good boy.
I love this scene.
So
more
we
interaction with Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the scene. This is good. He just walks up on her. He's got a very Amy Adams, Lois Lane quality that he just shows up. Anybody? That was a good dig. No, nobody. Look, I'm in the museum. Look, I'm down at the gutter.
Yeah. Happenstance. Convenient happenstance.
Look at her eyes again. Like her eyes are they're bloodshot and intense.
She's and I saw her in something recently. She's in something that's new. I saw her in a preview, and as a 60-something-year-old woman, she's still gorgeous. She's so great. People say, men age better than women, and like Michelle's like, hold my beer. Shit, I'll show you. She looks fabulous.
This scene, the grain seems very pronounced. It's interesting. I'd love to see all four of these original, and I kind of touched on this before, but I would love to see all four of these original movies remastered in 4K.
Yeah,
because
I would not doubt if they eventually do that.
Mm-hmm. They'll have to.
Did everyone love Spider-Man: Homecoming as much as I did?
I did.
Yeah,
I loved it. Absolutely,
I absolutely loved it, and God, Keaton was great in that too, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah, man,
so great.
Yeah, he's half or more. He's like 51% of why that movie's great.
Oh, I agree.
They turned the vulture into a vulture. It was a cool idea.
Yeah, there's how to make an animal into a villain.
Yeah, but turning the penguin into a penguin didn't quite work.
It was a little more literal.
And how many of these like dumb blonde characters can we have in this part?
Like, how do you confuse a batarang for a camera?
Well, and that's the sound effect that accompanied his throw made it seem like she was stabbed by it.
Yes, it's like a slit.
Yeah, and then there's not a scratch on her when you see her now.
What is that ghoul above the fireplace? What is that thing?
It's a little Gotham gargoyle.
Yeah,
gargoyle.
That's what Batfleck stands on top of in the Justice League trailer.
There's a jar of pee on top of that thing.
Okay, so
Peach
remember,
tea.
Ryan, last time we did this, we were talking about his vault. So we'll have to keep an eye out when he comes out of the vault to see if there are bat suits set up before he actually gets to the hangers and the boots and the masks and stuff.
Okay. Was that your beef with it, that there were already suits assembled?
Well, it wasn't my beef with it. It's just more of an observation, but it is kind of a weird setup. Like, okay, so I've got these bat suits in front of the door. So I have to go around conceivably in an emergency
now here's
situation.
I haven't seen it shot for shot either, but I wondered if it was like, is it the same door with the drawbridge? I think it's a cool thing that the door is the drawbridge, but
that was a cool idea.
Is there are there two entrances? Does he go in one end and come out the other, or is it literally just like it changes the makeup of that when he goes?
Not too far away from it, but
yeah.
No, I mean these two play this scene pretty nicely. Okay, so here's the overt reference to the original movie. But see, other than this scene and maybe one other moment in this movie, it just kind of lends itself further to what Rick expressed at the top of the show. Is like, are these in the same category? Do these share? And clearly they do, but it is very, very loose.
You could,
the other moment is when, the other moment is when Bruce Wayne says to Alfred, "Who let Vicky Vale into the Batcave?" Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Wayne Manor does seem kind of a little smaller in this movie, maybe. Probably better designed, frankly, but I think they inhabited a location in England for the original movie.
It's
And
a little
this-
bit more personal
Yeah,
because
a
you
little
know in
more
Batman
intimate.
'89 you have the banquet scene and stuff like that.
He clearly learned his lesson from eating across from his date.
right
Probably not the best
Start
choice.
on the couch.
I like some of the Wayne Manor stuff in Batman Forever. Not a movie I'm very fond of, but there's some cool stuff. You know, even the stuff when Dick shows up and the motorcycles and the cars out in the garage, all that stuff was just cool. It's well done. Big fountain. Napalm.
I like this too. I mean, this is good Batman and Catwoman.
I remember thinking,
Character
oh, that
interaction.
TV looks so nice.
I did too. It was like it's so big.
My friend, I had a friend that his dad, well, he did. He had a TV like that in his house when I was growing up, and it was just so revolutionary. You know, this is like 1987.
Yeah.
And we had two VCRs, and we figured out how to record movies. We would rent a movie and record it onto another. And I would
Top of the
record like 3 movies per tape, and then I would have like an hour and a half left, so I would record like episodes of Cheers or Night Court or Cosby Show or Alf or whatever.
It's amazing.
Yeah, completely.
I do want to bring it. Like I hated the fact that they had Gordon go on TV like that on the news and be like, "We have this batarang and Batman's a suspect." I'm like, why would Gordon do that? Really?
Yeah, all the goodwill is just it's just so presumptuous.
Yeah.
Like very little real evidence of him other than just a batarang.
You want to see a better, more representative example of what Gordon would do than watch Mask of the Phantasm.
Mm.
You can't pin Batman on what happened to Chucky Saw.
Yeah. And then one of his cronies, like Bullock's all gung ho, like let's catch Batman. See, that would have had more credibility. Like somebody stepping the line, over Gordon here and be like, yeah, I'm going to pin this on Batman. He's the one behind this. Yeah,
Shouldn't have killed Eckhart. Shouldn't have killed him.
Yep.
Think about the future. I love how Alfred is just able to think of a dirty limerick on the spot.
One has just
And that's the
sprung
door
mind.
to the Batcave. Okay, so here's the vault.
Oh man.
True. So true.
Look at that.
Boom. Yeah. how
Dude,
does he
you
get
created
through
a
there?
maze. Go to the back of the vault and get your suit.
Why are there no
Yeah, he
hangers?
walks on the front and then he
Just put
goes to the
89
back.
in
The
there.
closet, so
The nice
terrible.
hangers.
Awful.
It's
This
an
is
interesting juxtaposition.
Yes,
Of like, look, he's got
yes.
this nice bat cave with the suit, and then she's like putting on her suit while she's
Hey,
driving.
to give credit where credit is due, my favorite Bruce Wayne looking at his suit scene is actually in BVS. With Affleck. That's
Sure.
It's a gorgeous scene. It's an awesome suit.
This is cool.
Ben's acting's great in it. It's a great scene. Yeah, that's cool.
Now we moved to CGI shields on the car as opposed to the stop motion.
Is this where he takes over his car?
I always
like
loved the shields though. Always loved them.
ability?
Yeah, look at that. There's like, look at this 1992 CG, so much better than 89. Look at that.
It's okay. I mean, since it doesn't draw too much attention to itself, it's okay. But I mean, you can definitely tell that it's almost 30 years old.
It doesn't bother. It never has bothered me.
No. But, weirdly enough, a movie like Jurassic Park has still never bothered me. Like
No, it holds up. That's it's
Same with
crazy how much
Terminator 2.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
that
that.
too. That too.
Terminator 2 was revolutionary in terms of special
Yeah.
effects.
Yeah,
I don't know if that
Truly
movie
was.
would ever look
that's a perfect
outdated.
movie. Yeah.
No, because it looks so real. It just looks. Look at the. It's like a
honest.
bad '80s. So bad. Oh God,
Now that shot right there, the animation.
terrible.
That's like when he napalms the arm.
So here we go with a grappler.
Yeah, but see, it's like a different.
It's a different grappler. Yeah,
Device.
it's not like the one that he used at the beginning, that's for sure.
Line.
Although
he
he,
uses-
although his grapple gun on his arm did that same thing in Batman '89. I guess they just wanted a more compact version of that.
Mm-hmm. And then he uses it one more at the end of this movie. One more time at the end of this
Oh, here
movie.
comes one of my
That's
favorite
true.
lines.
That was a cool part too. I like that.
Well, call it out, Peter, when you hear it.
Oh, I can't wait. Rick's gonna love it.
8th floor.
High fiber. I never understood that as a kid. I still don't know now.
I love that. She's just waiting there.
So great.
So good. He was probably thinking of that line the whole way. If I see Catwoman,
I love how she grabs the ears and just knees him in the head.
Yeah. And that face, the face she makes when she does that, that's amazing.
The bullwhip with the chair, love it.
And she could have like ran over there, but no, she had to do it with style. She had to backflip back there. That's just so Catwoman. It's so good.
She was never as pale in the movie as she was in like the posters.
In the marketing.
You notice that?
Yeah. That's a Tim Burton thing too. It has to be.
But Keaton always had like a normal flesh tone.
So was the Penguin.
But yeah, Penguin and Catwoman were always so pale. Doug Jones, here he is again.
That's so awesome. The fact that it's Doug Jones, not that the Batmobile's being bugged.
Yeah. Which is more credible? The Penguin acquiring plans to the Batmobile somehow and like dismantling it and turning it into an H-bomb on wheels, or Jason Todd stealing the tires off the Batmobile?
Jason Todd.
Or John Blake knowing who Bruce Wayne was.
Oh, yeah. I had my fair share of debates about that when that movie came out. But, I mean, it seems like that could have been a plot point. Like, the Mechanic episode of the animated series immediately.
Yes.
I mean, one of my all-time favorites. But
was the Penguin involved in that episode?
He was. He absolutely
okay.
was. See, I mean, if you found out who built the car, then you could have squeezed that guy, and here's the cops rushing in.
That's why Harold is so important to Batman mythos. He'll never.
There's Gordon being completely useless. But then again, like you go through some weird stuff like that, and then I love this moment here.
Just the background, everything, that little like doll thing in the corner. It's all like just creepy and eerie, but perfect.
The way this is shot and the character position, like it's so cool.
Sets up the mistletoe.
Sets up the mistletoe scene later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This makes that next scene, that scene in particular, that much stronger. Yeah.
It's like that at that moment, he's like, oh, she's a wacko.
Oh, Jesus.
Or
I don't think he's thinking that.
He likes it. Look at his face.
Oh,
he licks
his lips and everything. He's like,
yeah, that is like
match.
That's incredible. Yeah. He's just absolutely just enamored with her. Like Catwoman is Batman's weakness, and I think that they do a good job of showing that in this movie.
How many times did she stab him with those nails? It's like
exactly.
The third time.
Well, that's what he's thinking about right there. He pulls it out. He's like,
again?
I can't tell you how many times I would rewind my VHS tape to watch the glider flare out.
Yes, as a kid,
so cool.
I love this part.
It was really cool.
This must have made a great toy.
Yeah.
It did. I had it.
You like pull his legs together and it.
I mean, even though he's kind of doing the Penguin's work for him right here.
Right.
Like there's
but
a bunch
I love
of
it though,
bats
just the
and
idea.
Oh yeah, I do too.
The one toy from the returns line I had to have was the Bat Missile. I spent an arm and a leg for it on eBay. I loved it.
Yeah.
You think about the shot in Batman Begins.
Exactly. Where he jumps down and
it's very similar. He's flying over. Yeah, I never really thought about that until just now.
Yeah. Surrounded Batman. There's something amazing to me about any scenes in films with Batman surrounded by real bats. It always works for me, whether it's in the cave in Batman Begins or that scene in later where he's in Arkham Asylum with the bats or in The Dark Knight Rises with the bats. And same deal here. It just works for me.
See, this conversation between them, it just kind of emphasizes the camp of this movie because people who say that this movie isn't campy are categorically incorrect. There's a difference between light camp and dark camp. This is dark camp, but it is very present.
Well, Chris, and that's the interesting thing to me about this film is that in some ways this film's a lot more lighthearted and campier than Batman '89. And then on the other hand, it's a lot more sadistic. It's a lot
cynical.
It's cynical. It's a lot darker in terms of a lot of the content. So the film's a big mismatch to me.
Yeah, I mean it's like Penguin's whole attitude in regards to dishing out violence. That in itself is an element of camp. It is sadistic camp, but it is still camp. And I mean, as far as Batman and Robin and the 60s show are far closer in terms of lighthearted camp tone, but I mean, this is just, it's on the same spectrum. It's just on the other side of it. And it frustrates me when some people fail to recognize that this is very self-indulgent camp.
I think it's because it's hard to categorize, because a lot of people think like, oh, Batman Returns is so dark, but that's kind of it's more than that. There's more to the explanation than that.
It's dark for the sake of being dark, and it is dark in a way that tries to draw attention to the fact that it is dark, and that is what makes it campy.
Right.
Burton.
By the way, that shot that just happened is amazing, where Batman rolls out of the glider. I love that so much. And look, he's got like oysters and canned fish, and like cans of tuna in this thing that he's in.
I pulled this scene up in my driver's ed class just as a joke. It was pretty fun.
I love the lines too. Welcome to the Oswald Cobblepot School of Driving. It's so good.
Where did he get the mini Batmobile from? That's what I want to know. Like his little like carnival ride. Like who makes that? Because I want one.
If you in my head canon now, one of the early drafts of this script had Gotham City embracing Batman as a hero, and they had all kinds of Batman merchandise and stuff like that. And so in my head, I would be like, well, maybe somebody did make like a coin-operated Batmobile or something, and then maybe the Penguin just acquired that, repurposed it.
But see, it just kind of emphasizes the camp, because if you just change out some of the aesthetic choices, it doesn't take too much imagination to see this scene between Burgess Meredith and Adam West.
Absolutely. And, in the 60s show, there's countless times where a villain stole the Batmobile, or a villain's controlling the Batmobile, or the Batmobile's commandeered by the villain somehow. It's a very big plot point in that.
The very first episode.
Right, exactly.
When they tried to get it, yeah.
What was that round thing he just put in that gadget? What was that?
It's called a compact disc.
Was that a compact disc? Okay, thank you very much.
A blob
He has a CD burner.
This film has answering machines and compact discs. I just don't know.
The bat signal is not a beeper.
The Batmobile is built on the skeleton of a 6000 SUX.
That's great. I love it. I always liked the 89 Batmobile scene way more.
Oh.
I mean, mostly for Elfman's music.
Yeah.
But
there's more style to, there's more grandeur.
Well,
I did like the bomb missile part, but the scenes for 89 were just so much better.
See, and I think this scene in and of itself, because we had someone ask about the differences in score between 89 and 92, and this kind of characterizes to me that this score is smoother in a way. It feels like the 89 film was a little rougher around the edges.
Right.
But in a scene like we pointed out in the last commentary that featured Descent into Mystery, that roughness and that crescendo.
That bombastic nature. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And this movie just kind of goes smoother into the peakier elements of the score. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there's if I could say I like one better than the other in its totality. But there are definitely moments in each of them that I prefer over the other movie. Just depends on the scene.
Yeah, we just actually got an interesting question on Twitter that I thought would be good timing from Batboat77. Do you think the main problem is that instead of using the Penguin as a will to tell a story about power/politics, he was used for mainly comedy? And I think the reason I think the timing is perfect because this scene is meant to be kind of funny, right? Has right in terms of the Penguin and all his shenanigans. I don't know. What do you guys think of that question?
I can see that. I mean, the moments, I feel like the comedic moments outweigh the darker ones just in terms of being memorable. It's much easier to immediately jump to one of the funnier moments with the Penguin as opposed to you don't immediately think of, hey Max, remember me, I'm Fred Hat. You don't immediately think of that when you think of the great Danny DeVito Penguin moment. So if the story had concerned itself a little bit more with talking about the intertwining power and politics, the potential definitely would have been there. But Burton probably was more concerned with playing to DeVito's strengths, which are comedic first and vicious second.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah,
And
let him be zany, yet he still is going to want to murder newborn babies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, literally, that's what he
did
wants to do.
talk over the Bat Missile sequence, and I love that. Everything about that. It's turning into the Bat Missile, Batman's reaction, the way that happens. But, I always wondered, is it turning into the Bat Missile something that happened as a result of the Penguin, or is that something that Bruce knew how to do?
I feel like he knew that was going to happen. I feel like that's an escape route, because, why else would the Batmobile do that unless you're going to that specific alley? It's like, okay, I know a regular car can't follow me here, I always felt like he did that intentionally. He's like, I have this in the back of my pocket.
And there they are back in the same town square, too. There's no scope in this film.
Oh, Kenny Goldstein had a question for us. What do you think happens to the side pieces of the Batmobile after they detach from the car? Does Alfred just go get them?
I would like to think that Batman had the foresight enough for them to self-destruct.
Tumblr style.
Great. Or is it like the 60s show? Like when there's a parachute, they always showed the scene of the Batmobile parachute pickup.
Sucking it back up, yeah.
Yes, they would go pick it back up.
And here we get DJ Bruce Wayne.
DJ B-dubs.
That was the 1992 version of the Bat Poles, guys.
Yeah, that's true.
I like that. Alfred takes the stairs.
Yeah, down there quick. An agile Alfred.
Just the presence of an Iron Maiden in a Batman movie still strikes me as strange.
Yeah, I wonder whose idea that was.
That seems like a Burton thing.
Yeah.
I play this city like a heart from hell.
Maxie. Yeah, she. I really want one of those Cobblepot for Mayor posters.
I want all those 90s grunge rockers back. Where'd those guys go? Brings back good memories.
I didn't say that.
I like how it turns them on it. Man, if this is like, I don't know if this is funny or sad, because we had much worse things than this happen to us politically last year, and nothing changed.
Or yesterday.
And yet 5 seconds of bad audio here derails his entire campaign. And yeah.
Well, before 2000, I'm not going to start talking about politics. But hey, so does everybody? Because I won't stop if I do. Then you have to cut me out of the show. Does everybody here in Gotham, especially the men, is everybody wear the same hat? Look at all these hats,
fedoras.
Well, I like how they all have the vegetables ready to go. I mean, they are ready.
True.
They were just at the farmer's market, Chris.
There should have been a shot
around the corner.
Hands over.
Jesus, come on, man.
I don't know if I'd like to go to a farmer's market in Gotham. That does not sound like the best spot.
Not in that Gotham.
This, and then
I don't know.
Shrek just
look pretty
looks like
good,
whatever.
Isn't it amazing how easily people just leave people in this film?
This is like
suddenly,
Twitter.
Yeah, well, yeah, just suddenly Gordon this has. Despite everything that's happened, Batman's a murderer because I found this batarang, and then just now Shrek's like, oh, sorry, one bad speech, I'm out later.
Yeah,
no loyalty in this movie, guys.
I love this little dive from the platform here.
He's like, whoa.
Right on top of that guy.
Cobblepot can clean it up. Law and order.
Completely
he alone
unnecessary.
can fix it.
Look at that.
Oh, look, here he goes.
Loses his hat.
Back to where he began.
When you guys read Batman
can't catch
comic,
him.
Oh, well, because he's very fast. I mean, his body is
there he is.
aerodynamic.
Let's shoot him.
Well, bullets can't
that's
travel
a
that
good
far
point.
in water.
Because when he...
I love this duck.
Oh, good God.
Incredible.
when he first hits the water, it's like his leg is out of it, and then he just like pulls it down. So I wonder how deep that water really was.
In the beginning of the movie, there's these ducks hanging from what looks like some sort of like, just like car system or just way to get from like around the park. And I always wondered, like, was this one of those ducks?
That's probably what
and
that
then, but
was.
Where did the wheels
and
come from? If it's like a
here
ride.
you go. I got an answer for that. I bet you the Red Triangle Circus Gang kind of, repurposed it to do that because they were obviously skilled in doing weird circusy tech stuff to the Batmobile. I bet they were able to take that duck vehicle and add all the forklift.
So was the fat
stuff.
clown Harold?
Beautiful work by Stan Winston on the penguins.
Absolutely.
Those are animatronic penguins. At least the Emperor penguins are animatronic.
Those are some of the best toys for the Returns line too. The little penguin figures.
Yes,
they were awesome.
Commandos. Every time my grandma would come visit me, she would get me another copy of the Penguin Commandos figure. I think she probably got a whole bunch of them for like cheap at Big Lots or something like that. But it was cool because each set you get a set of 2, and so eventually I had a nice little army of Penguin Commandos.
And they all had rockets too, right?
Exactly. They had the cool like 90s like colored rockets with the headbands and like the colored stripes.
The goo's coming back. Here's your answer, Rick.
See, as dark as this moment is, it's a moment of camp. Because it's absurd.
Someone's got to pick up that list of kids, Those are kids that aren't going to get kidnapped,
Here we go with the first of a few deaths of people just falling into this water. Yeah. That freaked me out as a kid, too. I love this scene.
Follow him.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Get on the duck and follow him.
I actually like this right here when he tears it up.
And he's so happy.
He's like, no, I think I'll go. Maybe Slee and Kyle will be there. Watch the look on his face.
I like that he was working on the
pause. You son of a bitch.
And I love this orchestration of Rick James Super Freak. I think that's kind of amazing.
Listen, until that dumb duck crashes and ruins this entire scene, this is one of the best scenes in any Batman movie ever.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says. There's no way Nolan wasn't paying homage to this film or the scene in Dark Knight Rises.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Just no way, right? Between Bruce and Selina.
It's unmistakable that somebody, Nolan.
See, I almost felt that way with what he did with the Joker scene at the end in TDK. When he's like, "Come on, hit me," like I kind of felt that way about 89 and Dark Knight, like it was almost like an homage scene.
Sure.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point.
Also, this Keaton tuxedo made a really cool Hot Toys figure, and I was able to get it discounted, and I'm very fortunate I did.
Awesome.
Because it's a 2-pack.
Yeah.
And you could take the head out, and it has the rip mask, and there's a lot of options you could do it.
Right.
And
then you have this Susie and the Banshee song that starts. It's just great.
I love her hair.
Very, very different approach when it comes to popular music in the film compared with the last time.
Yeah.
Like this scene almost seems out of place in this movie. It's like it belongs. Like I want to see the movie that should surround this scene.
Yeah. Yeah, you could make a trailer like you were saying, like of the best parts of this movie, and be like, man, where's the great movie around these parts?
Like this is so good. And then when she starts to have her little meltdown, and she's talking about Shrek,
she makes it totally believable. Yeah,
it's completely.
I love that point you made, Chris, where they had a more of a producer driven, like, we got to get Prince and make Prince do the soundtrack, and Warner Brothers wants to have an album. I think. Wasn't it like Tim Burton's choice for Batman Returns? He's like, I want like just one thing. I want like Susie and the Banshees to make a song.
Yeah,
for it.
I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, it's nice in the sense that it's the kind of music that's perfect for a backdrop, especially a backdrop to a scene like this. Yeah. And I also like too that when she does go through her slight breakdown here in a second, he does have an instinct kick in to try and calm things down, to de-escalate the situation. And then, of course, a duck shows up.
Yeah.
That duck is great, guys. Go on. It's just so ridiculous.
But look at this. Watch her laugh here.
It's perfect.
And then look at him. He doesn't quite know what to make of it. He's a little uncomfortable.
And then he notices what's going on.
That's hot.
Yeah, that's Batman looking at a gun too, so I'm sure it's like, ooh, don't like that.
Affleck would have pulled his out and they would have discussed guns for 20 minutes. Just kidding. Okay, look at this. Watch. Who the hell do you think you are?
You guys are right. Her eyes are really interesting in this movie.
Watch this.
Watch
this little breakdown she
Which
has
is
here.
great. Which is great, Peter, because like all this talk of Keaton being cast because of his eyes, and it just to have Catwoman have just as much of that in her performance wise, it's a really cool.
Here we go. The mistletoe line.
Yeah.
Watch this.
Oh no!
Shh, silence. But a kiss can be any deadlier.
Look at how watery.
God, it's so good. Look at this when they finally they figure out
And
who one
his
another
face
are.
and her face, like
God, that's
the
so
close-ups,
great.
the music, everything works.
It literally makes me angry that this brilliant scene is in this wasted film. This scene is just, I mean, and these two are so perfect.
She was so close to getting out of there, man. The Penguin just ruined everything. She was so close to getting out of there scot-free.
In more ways than one.
So I didn't get an invitation, so I crashed.
And he goes back to like his onesie, when he's like drained, like color penguin. He's like, I need this onesie.
My nice dirty onesie I've been wearing for however long.
Yes, thank you. He does.
His style's incredible. He's got this raggedy mullet and this onesie with these boots and this top hat.
Well, it's just funny because it's like, I guess it's interesting to me how they had to give Danny DeVito like platform boots to make him taller as the Penguin of all characters.
Is he that short in real life?
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's it? DeVito? Oh, so my wife and I sat next to him and Rio Perman at a restaurant a few years ago in San Francisco. We didn't talk to them, but it was just, I mean, we were right. I wanted to say something to her because I'm a huge Cheers fan. My wife wouldn't let me, so whatever. But anyway, a couple of times he got up and it was just, I was just kind of, he walked right by me and I'm just looking at him going, God, you're a little, God, you're a little guy.
Google says that he's 4'10".
Yeah. And Rhea Perlman is taller than him and she's little, it was pretty funny. On a side note, they could not have been nicer to their server and they just seemed really cool. So this.
If Max has one good quality, it was he was going to give himself up for his kid. I got to give him that.
Well, Chip is the Prince of Gotham, right? Everything is for Chip.
This power plant, it's my legacy.
Hey, I have kids. I love my kids.
Who do you want to see in raw sewage?
In the duck.
But I'm tough, bro.
In the duck. I love that. I use that line all the time too, Pete. Whenever we need to go somewhere.
And then when he tries to drive it up the stairs, oh my God, I love it.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
I love that the duck he put the hat on the duck so the duck could keep wearing the hat.
In the box set commentary, DeVito talks about the monkey giving him the letter and how they did it as him as Danny and everything was fine. But he comes out as Oswald and he's gooing and grunting and waddling and the monkey wouldn't
and the monkey's afraid of him. Yeah. So good.
It's like, that was your first clue.
Or no, that's probably when they were like, this is exactly
what that's probably what they thought.
There's a kryptonite spear in that water.
I could see it from here. It's glowing still.
That's so God, that's so effed up.
I had just assumed that was that lagoon of toxic waste that he had talked about
that's
before.
Exactly it. That's exactly it.
So now we are coming upon maybe this is my favorite scene in the movie. I mean, you know the old saying that a broken clock is right twice a day. And see, with this, it just kind of gets to the core, really. Like, if there's one scene that I could choose for Batman Returns that actually gets to the core of Batman, it is probably this one, because not only is he saving children, but he's scaring the bejesus out of an evil man while he's doing it.
That's true. And the silhouette they put is great. And like the gloves coming down and grabbing him to me are the most pivotal visual aspect of that scene. Boom.
That's
so
brief.
All you need. It's so good. And it starts like thundering or whatever, lightning at the same time. On the other hand, man, I can't believe the cops didn't catch that train because it was going really slow and nothing else was going on.
Maybe they were all trapped under a football field.
No. The cops are less competent in this movie than Dark Knight.
Batman loved notes in the Burton movies. And 89 here. He loves these little Post-it things.
It reminds me of like the movie serials, actually. That's what he would do in those.
Yeah,
like he would
that's a good
criminals
point.
on the doorsteps and leave a note.
That almost seems very Spider-Man.
Didn't that happen in The Dark Knight? Like Batman leaves Gal?
Yeah, on the steps of City Hall or probably the police station. He does do that. I don't know if he has a note.
He did have something taped. I think he did. I mean, you could argue that Falcone was kind of a note in and of himself.
That's true.
I love how he has to have the spotlight on him. This is great. This is to the Penguins, no less.
See, and this is another element of camp because it's parodying Patton.
In that box set, Burton says people tell him some people are like, well, the movie's too dark than the first, and then they say, well, it's actually funnier or lighter than the first, and he's like, well, I don't get it. What is it? Like even he gets it both ways, and he really can't figure it out himself.
Hey, you can do both. I mean, it's not as binary as someone might think. I mean, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies are pretty funny, but what comes with that, you know?
After 2, those got a little crazy too.
Yeah. I like Dream Warriors, but not much beyond
My
that.
favorite part
You know
of
what's
Dream
funny?
Warriors was it was in the new It. You know, it has a little cameo on the marquee.
Oh, that's true. So does Batman
Is
89?
that great?
I had the Bat Ski Boat. Oh, I'm sorry.
I love the Bat
Really,
Ski
I like
Boat.
the Forever Boat more.
No, I love the Bat Ski Boat because I like how it has a single purpose.
Uh-huh.
You know, riding in Gotham City like sewer tunnels. It's just cool. It's cooler than the Bat Boat.
That's an expensive toy to try and find. I've only seen it for like fives at 500, and you're like, I don't know, I can't do that.
Ooh. Justin Kosky was sending me some text messages. He apparently still has newspaper clippings from when Batman Returns came out, and he's got one that's kind of interesting. We were talking about it earlier. It's called, like, the headline is Bats, Cats, and Penguins, and it's about how Warner Brothers hoping that lightning will strike twice with the sale of Batman Returns merchandise. They're hoping for $1 million results with the likes of Burton, Catwoman, and the Penguin. So I think that's an interesting thing. Like, even then, it was showing, like, the studio focusing on money and merchandise and stuff like that.
The vehicle toys for this movie were wonderful because I had the Batmobile that turned into the Bat Missile.
Oh, it's so great.
I wish I still did,
Chris.
but I mean that is probably the single best Batmobile toy.
I bought it like 2 years ago,
maybe ever.
and it works perfectly, like it's brand new. Just hit that gold button, and it's so spring loaded. They really do fly off the sides.
Oh yeah, they totally do.
I love this penguin army. It's so neat.
As he's sitting there eating sardines, like it's popcorn.
Yeah. And yeah, the
So,
Bat Ski
Peter,
Boat's great.
I'm
and,
just-
and the Batman and the custom coupe, the Bruce Wayne custom coupe.
I love you, buddy, and I respect you. I just have to ask you. You have decided that this movie is not very good at this point,
I
right?
see. There's so much nostalgia here.
I'm just kidding, dude.
Like,
I'm kidding.
I really do like the movie. I always say I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's a good Batman movie. You know, because it's dark and he kills and it's a little weird. You know,
I get it.
That's a
This is a great time to ask to put one of our almost final Instagram questions from Brett Jones. He says, if WB asked Burton to lighten up his sequel in an effort to sell more toys, it seems that he missed the memo. What aspects of Returns represent an effort to lighten the tone? Cheesy dialogue, penguins with rockets, etc. Or did Burton just ignore the request altogether?
I think that he framed it perfectly earlier. I think that there is a lot of camp in this movie. I think there's a lot of camp geared towards selling toys. The duck, for instance. Okay. the problem is that it's a weird mismatch of a film where you have the camp, but then you have a sewer goo spewing, flibber flapping baby murderer as the Penguin, but who also has goofy one-liners and has a fun umbrella and has a funny duck. And it's like he got the memo, but he said, all right, cool. I'll tell you what, I'm going to keep this crazy dark film I'm doing, but I'm going to add in a bunch of fun stuff that you could still put on a Happy Meal at McDonald's. The problem is you couldn't. In fact, it was even more confusing, right?
They use they just use a generic comic book looking penguin for the toilet.
Right. It was the superpowers mold. It was the superpowers mold that they just repainted. But see, I think it's in the eye of the artist too, because if someone at Warner Brothers said, make it a little campier, make it a little goofier, when you tell that or make that request of Tim Burton, then Tim Burton is going to interpret that and go, okay, I'll just have him bite some random dude at the nose, and I'll have him, grab a full dismembered human hand out of a pile of other crap that he has. And that's just goofy, right?
You don't necessarily get family friendly when you ask for campier and lighter. Yeah.
I love how she just vanishes here.
And just pulling back. And then that's the last straw.
One of the best duck scenes in the movie here.
Oh, he just gets so upset. I love how
the duck. I love how Peter is counting down all the great duck scenes.
The score is
duck.
Loves
there's
this
a duck.
Too.
Well, and the tire screeching, right?
Even on Batman's radar, it's a duck.
That's true, man. That's amazing. I've never really noticed the absurdity of that until now. Watch this, and he just turns.
You just noticed the absurdity of that?
This is painful. He decapitates the duck.
I love this. And I love the scream that Penguin does right here.
I remember being in the theater, and right about all this point, I was sitting there thinking to myself,
I don't like Batman anymore.
I was like, will this thing just end, please?
Did you notice too that when he's actually in the full size prop of the Bat ski boat, he's laying down front first, and then he just kind of rises up from it. So he's not actually, the actual prop did not have a cockpit for him to sit in. He just kind of had to shuffle in and duck his head for the door to open, and then he could stand back up.
Reminiscent of the firing mode in the Tumbler. Burton did it first.
All leads back to Burton did it first.
I love this part though. This is almost like an interesting juxtaposition with their confrontation earlier. A Batman who has the upper hand, and you don't really think you'll win, do you? And now Penguin notices that, Batman's about to win.
When we just got past the "you're just jealous" line too, we spoke over. But
it's a great line.
Yeah,
because I'm a genuine freak, and you have to wear a mask.
Just looks like a lumpy sack of potatoes. It's so crazy.
Well, he doesn't pose any real threat at this point. It's sad.
He can't beat Batman. I mean, he can't even lift his arms over his head.
No. He looks so Danny DeVito there too, doesn't he?
I was about to say that. Plate? It just, to me, it was more like a hidden compartment.
It looked like a license plate flew off.
CG bats hold up to me.
Yeah, they're not bad.
Work. I always wondered why that would kill the Penguin.
I always love his use of miniatures.
Just fell into water, ain't it fine?
All this here is just a convoluted mess. Here's the monkey, though.
Well, and I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I think it also kind of represents the dark side of camp when he comes upon the fried monkey. I mean, we're going to get it pretty soon, but I mean, it just lends itself a little further to.
I love this though. You think he's about to escape, and then boom, Catwoman. Yeah. I think that's awesome.
No, that's cool.
That's very Catwoman too. Whoop, she comes in just when like a black cat. Oh, bad luck.
Just leave the corpse down there. It's fine. Maybe the Penguins will eat it.
Let me check this gun as I'm underwater.
Looked like he hit his head.
How long is he going to stand there and just stare at that?
I can't believe how ignorant Max Schreck is to the identity of Catwoman and Batman.
Here's the next grapple point.
I love this.
He just wings out here.
Being able to hook it onto his cape.
The flaring out of the cape when he comes down, it looks brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
And the music, of course.
Yeah.
And we mentioned this before. We mentioned this before, but I really hope that Elfman finds a way to bring the old theme back in the DCEU.
do. I don't even care. Just do it.
Just do it, man.
Would you want the old John Williams Superman score back too?
See,
I don't know.
Or just for the return?
That I don't think so.
They already tried to do that in Superman Returns.
Yeah.
That music was there, and it fell flat.
Trying to Smallville, it worked.
I love Zimmer's Superman theme.
Yeah.
I absolutely love Zimmer's Superman theme, but what Junkie XL came up with for Batman is not nearly on par with what we got.
In BVS?
The more lyrical part of the Junkie XL theme of BVS I like, but it actually could work if they changed the theme, because it's supposed to represent a change in the character himself between BVS and Justice League. So if they wanted to change the theme and they could do it, they could do it in a clever way.
It's pessimistic. And there's the eye switch.
I just don't understand how. Look at that. That's so.
Yeah. I would be even more okay with it if they would have just done it like mid shot, like he looks down and then he's ripping it off and then it's gone. But the fact that they have to show the shot with it off and then he takes the mask off, I think that's what makes it weird.
I don't understand how that left the editing room. And also, when I talk about the costume in '89, so much tougher and thicker and sexier and hardier and whatnot. A good example is just now, and I understand they set it up like this for the scene to be filmed, but in the whole movie, the suit just looks like it could just be torn the way he just ripped that mask off.
Well, that's why he's got 50 of them in Batman '89.
I feel like it's all just. And then he says, "You're fired." Jesus, come on.
Now, don't they do this in BVS? In the shot where he comes back in the Batmobile and Batman jumps out of the car and then he walks around the turntable and stuff. Does he take the mask off? Does Batfleck take the mask off?
Yeah, he takes the cowl off. He just, as he's after.
And is the eye makeup gone?
Yeah.
Or
it is,
not?
yes. After the Superman confrontation, the first one.
Yeah. So they do what I said they should have done here. Just have him take the mask off, but you don't see
his eyes when the mask comes off.
Right.
And the same thing happens in, I think, Begins, when he comes back to the Batcave with Rachel Dawes. He takes his mask off.
The eyes around the Bale mask were a lot closer, though. I feel like these are more triangular, more traditional Batman comic book, whereas for Bale, they're circular and closer, more form-fitting.
Yeah. More like an eye shape.
And her acting is just amazing in this, but the whole... This whole notion.
Well, this is supposed to be Two-Face here. This is
counting down her lives.
This movie follows a conceit that frankly bugs me about Burton's perspective on the characters, that they can't be interesting or heroic unless they have psychological handicaps.
Right.
It's a broader fundamental issue that it doesn't really affect my enjoyment or lack thereof, certain scenes in this movie, but from a broader perspective, that's why it's why I appreciate Nolan's work so much. And, the way that they approach Batman in the DCEU, where he represents, as Denny O'Neil once said, the triumph of rationality for all the fact that he lurks in a costume. He's brilliant and he's tactical, but in this, everybody is a neurotic mess. Yeah. Everybody.
Yeah. And I think that was very deliberate on Burton's.
Sure. Not to say that neurotic people can't be heroic, but everybody in this movie is crazy.
I think that was the only way that he felt that he could make it work, probably. When he talks about Batman '89, it's well, what kind of person would put on a bat suit? Somebody that's crazy.
Wasn't it? Didn't he say he played Bruce Wayne kind of insane? Because it was kind of fitting, that an insane guy would do it.
Yeah, yeah. We talked about that in the last one, about how someone like him would need to dress up for effect, and And, I mean, it was a different conception of Batman overall, and it was the way that Burton saw to make it work. But we didn't really see, until Batman Begins, that you could have this dark Avenger of the Night that also represented the source material. I mean, Nolan approached doing Batman from a fundamentally different perspective because he wanted to do justice to the comic, since that had never been done on film before, frankly. But I mean, as a step towards what we ultimately got, you can't dispute the milestone that Batman 89 and Batman Returns presented towards ultimately, like Rick said earlier, I mean, this one led to a change in course which failed, which then gave us one of the most celebrated iterations of Batman in other media in the character's history. So you can't dispute the movie's importance.
Yeah, it's true. And I think this also, like, we've been talking a lot too about how this represents the first shift in the way Batman gets approached on film. And I think this is showing us like the first ebb and flow of the way Warner Brothers kind of relationship they have with their filmmakers with Batman too. Like, you know, they make Batman 89, it does great, it's truer to the character. Okay, that's great. Let's let the director do whatever he wants. And then you get Batman Returns, and you see it repeated again with Batman and Forever and Batman and Robin. And then it paid off brilliantly with, you know, the Dark Knight trilogy. But then we're kind of in part of that cycle again, it seems, with, you know, Batman versus Superman.
And then you see all these penguins watching him sink and his corpse. It's
great.
It's far out there, that's for sure.
So it's awful.
And yet again, as a kid, I'm like, really? They're going to kill another Batman villain? Like,
that always bothered me. Even when they got rid of Two-Face and Forever, I'm like, ugh.
That too. I'm like, why do they keep doing this?
Now, this part right here is really cool. And it's unfortunate that we weren't able to explore this more.
Yeah.
Because I would much have preferred to see a really cool Burton Keaton sequel that worked. Because as much as I love 89, and then the things I liked about this film really are him, Keaton. He is he's the only reason he and Michelle Pfeiffer are the only reasons I can even tolerate watching this movie.
Because Keaton just has a very unique take on Bruce Wayne and Batman, and you know, it works.
This scene right here, guys,
both of these movies.
Like, if it happened today, because this scene was like an added-on reshoot. Can you imagine the internet drama of the scene of just panning up with Selena Kyle just wiggling in the Catwoman suit? Can you imagine just the stuff that would have surrounded all of this and all the speculation and the nasty just tweets and everything?
You're just like, I've heard they're going back. They're adding something to the
reshoot
movie.
to Catwoman. Catwoman at the end. What do you mean she's at the end? Didn't she die? What happened? Didn't she didn't the building collapse on her? Like, it would just have been chaos. This stuff's been going on
I don't
forever.
know anything. What are you talking about? Twitter chaos and fandom? I don't know what that.
Just this scene would have, like, just saying, like,
Nothing.
reshoots have been going on for so long. Like,
Penguin has black goo.
And by the way, I have a black cat.
Did you name it Isis?
Black cats are awesome.
Oh, yeah, I was about to ask.
Isis has a few cameos in this movie as Miss Kitty, I think her name is.
Oh.
Pete, didn't you meet my cat, or did you not come to the house?
No, I did not. I was me and my buddy. We kind of ventured around Dallas. We did not make it to the shoe home.
That's right. We met at the we met.
Justin and Eric, tell me about your barbecue, though. I heard you grill a meat and steak.
You know, this last shot, again, echoes the end of Batman 89. Is the car drives away with Alfred, pans up Gotham City, and then
it's a
signal turns
scene.
on, and then somebody appears. And
I'm never going to complain about a movie ending on the bat signal. You know, it just feels right. Like a Star Wars movie ending on the Force theme.
Absolutely.
It's natural.
Great. That's a great shot. And see, the movie ends on a high because I love that whole scene. I love the dialogue between Bruce and between Alfred as they're in the car.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Look, this movie to me is it's really, really bad. But the parts that I love. And that's why I feel like it's like there's these scenes, and there are so many of them. They're peppered throughout the film, and 98% of them revolve around Bruce and Selena. And I love them so much. I just wish I could like bottle those things up and put them in another movie that Burton directed, that Keaton starred in, that Michelle Pfeiffer was in. Yeah. And that's the part that frustrates me, because I watch Batman and Robin, and that movie's so insanely ridiculous, right? But other than that great scene between Bruce and Alfred when he's sick, and it's a gorgeous scene, But other than that, there's nothing in that movie that you want to take out and bottle and apply somewhere else, right? It's just bad.
I've always been interested
Whereas
in a Burton 3. Like, just what would have been the idea?
I know.
Whether it's like a DC animated original or a comic, like, I would be interested in seeing it.
Where do you guys stand on this film as of this very second? We've watched it together. We've talked about it. We've all seen it a million times. We just watched it again. Chris, what are your thoughts? Does this change this film for you in any way?
No, I mean, if anything, it just kind of reemphasizes to me that even though we were almost 20 years into larger, big budget movie superhero exploitations, the genre was kind of in its infancy. You know, it was still kind of finding its footing. Like, I think that killing the criminals is a direct symptom of that. Yeah. We wouldn't start to understand, and nor would studios start to understand that, you know, when you don't kill your villains, you can probably bring them back at some point. And you might be even a little truthful to the comics on top of that. And, you know, in the end, I admire Batman Returns for the strides that it did make. I like its visual inventiveness. But as a Batman adaptation, I can't help but feel that it comes very, very short of the standard of meeting the way I understand my favorite character in fiction. I mean, I don't recognize many elements of this Batman or this Bruce Wayne. I don't recognize this Penguin. I don't recognize this Catwoman. I don't really recognize this Gotham. But, I mean, as a Tim Burton movie and as an event film in the early 90s, it definitely has its place in Batman history, just like every terrible moment of Batman's history has a place. This is not one of those terrible moments, I think, but it does have an important part to play in the history of the character, his exploitations elsewhere, and where we would ultimately go in the larger superhero genre.
Because I think that's all very well said, but I still look at this film and say, I can't say that it's worse than Batman and Robin, because Batman and Robin is just, I'm going to use a Ryan Haas term here. Ooh. Batman and Robin is just trash juice. Okay.
Oh, that's not me. That's Justin.
Oh, is that Justin?
That's Justin.
I got that from you. Maybe via osmosis. I don't know somehow, but I got that from you.
Trash juice. Ugh.
Trash juice.
It's definitely
right?
retweeted. That's for sure.
This film to me is, and you and I have both said it. This is a Tim Burton film with some Batman characters in it that are barely recognizable. And I am not a purist on any level. I don't care if it's a book I love, if it's a comic book or whatever. I mean, I love The Watchmen. I think it's Zack Snyder's best film. The ending has changed. Not only do I not care, I actually even prefer it.
I agree.
Right? There are certain, right there, sometimes it works, and I don't care in Nolan's Batman that Bane wasn't, 8-4, or there's all sorts of, I can take that transition from a book, comic book, graphic novel, what have you, to a film, and I can give the directors and the producers and the writers artistic freedom, and I can still embrace those changes, and I can accept it for what it is and enjoy it. So it's not that the Penguin is different. It's how he's different.
Well, and let me just add on that a little quickly before the other guys jump in, because obviously over the course of this commentary, I've referenced comparison with the source material a lot. And I actually wrote an op-ed for Jet a few years ago about what you are supposed to take as fans from the transition. And to me, the thing that makes the Dark Knight trilogy, in my mind anyway, the best cinematic transition of the characters is because it's true to the characters. It's not necessarily true to how the costumes look. It's not necessarily true to the overall aesthetic that one artist might have rendered over another artist. It's about feel, and it's about tone. Those are the things that I think need to be translated in order to be effective representations. I mean, you can't argue that Batman Begins or The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises is a one-to-one adaptation of anything you've seen in the comics, but it gets the characters right. The characters feel as they do in the source material, and that's always going to be the pivotal moment. And in this movie, they don't feel like that. At least not to me.
And in Batman 89, they did, and I didn't care that Jack Napier was the one who murdered Batman's parents. I didn't care that the Joker was, a gangster Joker. None of that mattered to me because the film worked. And the core aspects of the characters were alive and well and recognizable. And this film, they're just not. They're not recognizable to me at all. I mean, the only reason that Batman somewhat is because it's a carryover from a film that worked. It's the same actor. It's the same Bruce Wayne Batman in a sense. So I can accept that. And the reason that Michelle Pfeiffer worked, because she was so delicious in the whole movie, her performance, her look, she was just, she chewed the screen up, and I'm addicted to that sort of thing. But I'm going to have you guys, asked to wrap your head around this contradiction. I can apply that same logic from Catwoman to the Penguin because there's nothing wrong with Danny DeVito's performance. From an acting perspective, what he did with this Penguin was remarkable. But it was just all the wrong choices for the character. And that's the distinction, is it's not so much how it's executed, because we can look at something like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze and say we could probably make an argument that's a little closer to adaptation versus DeVito's Penguin is. But that's so horribly done that you can't even take that seriously. At least with this, I can take it seriously in the sense of his performance and what he did as an actor with it. It's unfortunate that it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's
Ryan?
all good. That's all good stuff. Like, for me overall, it's actually really hard for me to separate my childhood personal nostalgia for the film, and compare it to its place in the overall,
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just real quick. How old were you when it came out?
4.
4. That's right. And Chris, you were how old?
About 4.5.
And
probably the same
Peter?
age. I mean, I was born in 86.
Okay. See, and I was 17. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
I mean,
I'm
just because it was kind of in my formative years of Batman, I took every interpretation in like a sponge, so it didn't really bother me when I saw things that didn't feel like exactly like the character, because like I just, 5 minutes ago I just watched a movie where he sprayed some shark repellent on a shark and it exploded. But today, those nuances are a lot more pronounced, of course, and you can be like, well, yeah, the 60s Batman is still pretty darn true to Batman, in general, but the Batman in Batman Returns does a lot of things that just don't add up. Of course you can say, well, in Batman #1, he got in the Batplane and he shot a bunch of people down, so that makes it faithful, but it still doesn't really cut it, in a few places. But I still kind of appreciate the fact that Burton was able to make the film he wanted to make, although at the expense of making a faithful Batman film. And I think that, and what you guys have been talking about, and what I just brought up is something that we do have in our last Instagram question, which could be a nice springboard for wrapping this thing up. So this is from Jedman Fish. He says, actually his question was for Bill specifically, but he said that he wants to ask it this because that Bill hates the movie. But despite your feelings on the film, do you think there's something to respect about the fact that Tim Burton was brave enough to show his own interpretation of the character? And do you think that directors should always be 100% faithful to the source material, or could branching out and trying new things be a good thing by keeping characters fresh and surprising? And before you guys respond, I actually have Bill's response to this. He typed it up for me before we started this. So what Bill said is, yes, I'm a fan of the director-driven approach to comic book movies, especially Batman, as opposed to producer-driven ones. As I've said many times, I may not like Burton's Batman Returns, but I will defend his right to have made it. Directors should absolutely be allowed to interpret the source material and present their own versions of these characters. But with that said, fans in the audience have the final say and the right to love or hate their interpretations. That's the other side of that pancake. Ultimately, there should be a balance between being faithful to the source material and a filmmaker putting their own stamp on an iconic character like Batman. Yes, a fresh take is a must, but they must also be recognizable. in italics. It's a fine line, but one that must be walked. And to that point, I think that's something that you guys were already talking about in spades.
Yeah, Bill's perspective, as usual, is one that I find a lot of merit in. I mean, the only thing that comes to my mind about Batman Returns specifically is that Burton and Daniel Waters were not concerned at all with representing the source material.
Right.
So the fundamental driving factor behind Batman Returns becoming what it ultimately became was to be a blatant deviation from the expectations of people who probably hold Batman in reasonably high regard. I mean, that's why this movie created quite an uproar when it came out. So it has to be both ways. I mean, of course, you don't want to stifle a director at all. You want them to bring their strengths to the table in order to make the best movie that they can. But there has to be at least a partial desire on their part to represent the character as he is in the source material to a degree. If you aren't concerned with that at all, then why are you adapting him? Something about Batman made you want to make a movie about him. So if you're just going to throw everything out, then why are you calling it Batman? I mean, it's the same thing that, remember when Frank Miller released Holy Terror?
Right.
Which started as a Batman story,
right.
But DC had the foresight to see, first of all, this is extraordinarily controversial, and second of all, Batman wouldn't do this. So we're not going to let it be a Batman story. And it didn't end up being a Batman story. A little bit of foresight on the part of the studio may have helped, but I mean, it's a systemic thing that we've seen multiple directors have, right? So Burton makes a great movie that is very successful, so let's let him off the leash for the second one.
Right, and that's where I think the producerial input in Batman 89 helped it, stay a little bit more truthful and faithful.
Yeah, and same thing happened to Joel Schumacher.
Exactly.
He made a great movie for us. It was very successful. Let's let him off the leash. And the core difference between Burton, Schumacher, and a guy like Christopher Nolan is that Nolan had a desire to represent Batman as he has been for the totality of his existence.
And by the way, Peter, I just got your text. I'll just read it out loud. It just says, Rick, I don't want to admit this on the show, but you're right. This movie does suck. Don't tell him.
No,
Peter,
that's going to jeopardize me and Justin's.
Peter, why didn't you just say that out loud?
Ricky Joe, I'm disappointed in you. Like, Returns is like, it's so nostalgic to me, but like, there's a part of me that really was terrified by it as a child. But as I've gotten older, I've appreciated it just because it is an Elseworlds movie to me. Like, I think the movie could stand alone. It sometimes doesn't actually feel like a sequel to 89. But like, I do appreciate that fact that Burton made it his own in his image. And just from reading comic books and having different writers and different artists from like, even recently, like Snyder's Batman is different than Tom King's Batman. Burton's Batman is way different than Schumacher and Nolan's, and I can appreciate that. And I appreciate that there's this actual, like, there's already this DC multiverse that we have of Batman. Like, we have all these different versions, and I could pick what I want and pretty much from each movie and assemble the ultimate Batman. I do like Returns a lot, though. Like, I really do appreciate it.
Here, man.
And I remember at a point in time, like, I didn't have all these movies. Like there were only so many of these movies we had until like 2002 when this whole like genre just boomed. So there's so much nostalgia in Returns though that I do really do enjoy it.
No, and I think that's great that you do, man. And listen, when we talk about different incarnations of Batman on film, there's not an actor that has played Batman to date that I don't see redeeming qualities in. I don't hate, and I've said this before on multiple podcasts, I've written about it. George Clooney could have made a great Batman in a great Batman film. Yeah. He has the chops. He still could. You're right. Absolutely. Val Kilmer was great. And Keaton was obviously great. Bell was great. And all the problems I have with BVS, Affleck's Batman is not that's not the problem I have with that film.
Yeah.
And I've said this, even though I think it's a very slim chance he's coming back as Batman, I still hope I'm pleasantly surprised, and he does, because I think he's wonderful, and I want to see him in a real, true, standalone Matt Reeves badass Batman film. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get that, but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the thing about this character that I also love, and Chris talked about earlier about it being his favorite fictional character. It is absolutely mine as well. It is 100% mine. He is the greatest fictional character ever written. And one of the reasons, in my view, that make fictional characters work so well is how versatile they can be. Mm-hmm. You can take right? It's not, it'll never be pigeonholed, because you can have, I mean, look at Batman. Let's think about Batman, for instance.
One of the most malleable characters there is.
Absolutely. Take Adam West, go to Keaton, go to Ben Affleck, go to Lego Batman. Yeah. And all of them are awesome in their own right. You can't do that you can't even really do that with Superman. You certainly can't do that with the Hulk or Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Peter Parker has to be Peter Parker.
I love to say it every time I get the opportunity to. Batman is a tough old bastard. He can rise up from anything you throw at him. It doesn't matter how he shows up. It doesn't matter where he shows up. He always endures. He is, man. He absolutely is. And
he can take it.
And Chris, why is that? Is it because he's not an alien? He's not
because he's not a hero.
Because he's not a hero? Is that what it is?
I think that's certainly part of it. I mean, I tend to subscribe to a little bit of a different idea, because to me, Batman's will is the thing that makes him stand in the same league as a demigod in a red cape. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, he is an equal to Superman in something like the Justice League, because he has such innate ability to overcome every single thing that's thrown at him. And I mentioned this before, but you know, Grant Morrison's writing, I loved in Final Crisis and around Final Crisis, you know, Darkseid's whole plan was to create all of these duplicate Batmen so he can have an army of Batman to take control of the universe. But as soon as you put the experiences and trauma and everything that Batman himself has actually faced into those clones, what happened to those clones? They all started tearing their eyes out because they couldn't take it. They couldn't take every single thing that Batman had taken, fallen down, and gotten up from. And to me, that human aspect, of course, it lends itself to a degree of identification with regular people. But there's just something about his demeanor, the ways in which he can continuously be reinvented as a totem for human adversity. To me, that's one of the things that has always made Batman endure, regardless of the way that he's adapted.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Here. Batman is the consummate badass.
The Punisher. Batman.
We have. I have two young daughters, as you guys know, and I'm very excited that we're going to watch Lego Batman, and I have a modern day incarnation of Batman that I can sit down with them and enjoy. They certainly can't watch BVS, right? and or for that matter, The Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises or Batman Begins, really, or any of these films other than maybe Batman and Robin and Lego Batman, because there's even dark elements in Batman Forever. I wouldn't want them to.
Lego Batman is just as good as the best Batman movies. I mean, it's on par. It's great, fantastic.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
It knows how to honor the character properly in it. Yeah, that's exactly part of it.
Yeah, it's a full celebration of everything that Batman is and has been and will be.
Yeah.
What is your favorite cinematic Batman film, Peter?
I love Rises. I really do.
Yes.
It's I love Anne Hathaway. I love that the movie's mostly about Bruce Wayne and Batman's in it for 20 minutes, you know? And you don't care at all.
And you don't even care.
You care about Bruce.
You care about Bruce because Wayne. We care so much about Bruce.
You know?
Yeah.
God, I can hug you right now.
It's Spain.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like all those elements Chris was talking about why Batman matters and how he endures through the ages and stuff like that. I think that's why I like Rises the most, is because I think it takes a lot of that kind of ideas about the character and distills them into this final point on this 3-part story of like, what is Batman and why is he always going to last forever? And what is the point of him? And I think that's Rises does that. And that's why, to me, it's the best film.
What about Chris? What about you, sir?
It's The Dark Knight. And the reason that it's The Dark Knight is because I don't think I've ever encountered a conflict in fiction that has been more enriching or rewarding or definitive as Batman versus the Joker. And to me, that conflict is represented with absolute clarity, but even with more emotional weight than I've ever seen compared with virtually any other adaptation that it's appeared in, whether it's, including animation. To me, The Dark Knight has the same kind of emotional power that I personally feel for the Batman versus the Joker conflict. And it certainly doesn't hurt that we have perhaps the single greatest performance in a superhero movie in The Dark Knight. So the distillation of Batman versus the Joker, because I identify that conflict so closely with my favorite fictional character, easily rises it to the top. And
does it hone in on that, in that like razor sharp precision and the scene where they're in I can't get the word right. I can't get collaboration out of my head. Not collaboration.
Interrogation room.
Interrogation. Thank you. Collaboration. Interrogation. The interrogation scene, does it just encapsulate everything that you're saying right now?
Pretty much. I mean, I actually wrote an academic thesis about everything that scene means and what it represents between these two very different sides of the extreme personality coin. I mean, in the Dark Knight trilogy, Batman is not crazy, but he is an extreme personality because of the lengths that he goes to. And the Joker represents the polar opposite of that. But the meeting of the minds between those two guys in that scene is so utterly powerful, not just because both of the performers are really, really into it, but because it shows the competing ideologies. Batman knows how to beat a problem into submission at that point. He's never encountered anything like the thing that's before him, who cannot be beaten into submission. You have nothing to threaten me with.
All your strength.
Nothing to do with all your strength. And I absolutely love that he is forced to then elevate the purpose of his war in order to meet the unique threat that the Joker represents. So there's so many layers to peel back in The Dark Knight that I can't help but just submit to its greatness as my favorite Batman movie.
Do you think that Affleck, hoping and assuming he sticks around, and Jared Leto, do you think that there's the potential for that sort of dichotomy with those two actors and those two incarnations?
When you have Batman versus the Joker, the potential is always there. I definitely think that Leto could use a little bit of reining in when it comes to his perception of what the Joker is.
Is he trying too hard not to be like Heath Ledger, where it's actually hurting his performance?
I kind of got that impression, but to me it was more, he was more addicted to the idea of the sadism as opposed to the method behind the madness, because as sadistic as the Joker can be, he is very wily. He's crazy like a fox, you know? I mean, he always has a larger point to make. And at least in Suicide Squad, it didn't really seem like he had much of a larger point to make except to illustrate to people that he views Harley Quinn as his property. Right. So, but again, when you have Batman versus the Joker and when you have two clearly capable performers like Ben Affleck and Jared Leto, they certainly have the potential. It's just up to the right story and the right attitudes to meet it.
Hear, hear. And my favorite Batman film to date is probably Batman Begins.
Begins.
I think it's an excellent choice.
I think it's a perfect origin. It's a perfect origin story. I love that it doesn't rely on A-list rogue gallery villains. I love that for the first time you are so invested in Bruce that, at least for me, and I'm assuming millions of moviegoers as well, that I never was wanting to, or just anticipating the scene where he was in his bat suit. Of course, it was exhilarating when you did see it, but I didn't miss it when it wasn't there, right, because you were invested in Bruce Wayne. And that was something very unique on film. Yeah. And we've talked about this. And to come full circle here to wrap up, and Ryan actually will obviously tie the show up. This is his show, but that's what's missing a lot in these Tim Burton films, is that it's about the villains. And it's very unfortunate because there have been capable actors from George Clooney to Kilmer, especially Keaton, Keaton's my second favorite Batman. Affleck is my favorite Batman from an aesthetic standpoint. I mean, that guy looks like he just walked off the pages of the comic book. Yeah. And by the way, he does a damn good job on top of that, right? He's good. He's a good Batman. But it's just in terms of my personal favorites that just resonate with me are Bell and Keaton. And, I wish that Keaton, and I think that Keaton wishes this as well, would have had the opportunity to do a Dark Knight caliber film as Batman, and could have done it. And like we just said, so could Clooney, and so could have Kilmer. Kilmer has been cheated at Academy Award nomination more than once, in my view, especially for The Doors. Ridiculous work that he did in The Doors. He sang those parts. He was Morrison. Right? Anyway, I don't want to get on that soapbox. I'm just saying that there have been great actors and great incarnations, and Michael Keaton makes Batman Returns as much as I can't stand the film. Yeah. And still enjoyable to watch because I can just watch him.
Yeah. I think the point is just like when you take these characters and you're true to them and you make that the base before everything else, before the marketing, before the villains, before the, any of the other BS that goes into making a film, when you take those characters and you're true to them, that's going to get you the strongest, end result every time.
Yes, sir.
You're here.
Yeah, man.
Well, I think this was a ton of fun. Hopefully y'all liked listening to the commentary and all this extra commentary afterwards. It was really good stuff. But let's do some plugs.
Well,
Peter,
you can follow me on Twitter at Pete Illustrated. I am hosting the Batman on Film Justice League Watch Party in the New Jersey area, North Brunswick specifically, at the Buffalo Wild Wings and the Regal Cinema in North Brunswick on Route 1 on the 18th of November. So anyone in the area, I'd love for you to come by, come hang out, grab a beer, watch the movie, send off Affleck in a joyous, wonderful film, hopefully. That's pretty much it for me.
Cool. What do you got, Chris?
Feel free to follow me on Twitter at Chris Clow. Also, check out my show on the Batman Podcast Network, Comics on Consoles. And tentatively, I'm still trying to work some things out, but it's quite possible that I'll also be hosting a BOF watch party for Justice League in the Chicago area, probably more specifically in Skokie, which is a northern suburb. Hit me up if that's something that you're interested in, and I'll move heaven and earth to make sure that it happens.
All right.
But and I'm also a co-host of a great show called Geek Pulse Radio, where we take the pulse of geek stuff. So check that out too.
Awesome. Yeah. What about you, Rick?
I think that what I would just like to plug real fast is there's two new podcasts on the Left Shoe Politics podcast. My partners, Jeremy Grokley and Michael Malloy, interview Kelly Donaway, and she is a congressional candidate out of Missouri. It's a great interview. And I sit down with Matt Makoviak, GOP strategist, all in with Chris Hayes, regular, and we just talk about the first 9 months of the Trump presidency. Really enjoy it. And Matt's one of those guys that is kind enough to be a high-profile Republican to come on my gutter internet liberal bleeding heart show, and he really enriches the show because of his credentials and because of his insight. And we love having people from opposing views come in and talk. We genuinely really do. And then as far as Batman on Film, I'm very, very proud of our most recent Star Wars podcast. I don't want to diminish anything that we've done in the 2.5 years I've been doing shows and writing for that site. It might be my favorite show, and it's a tall order. I know we've done a lot of great podcasts, and it's not even Batman, which I feel weird saying that it's my favorite, but in a weird way, I think I just had the most fun on that show. And I give a lot of credit to Paul Herman for, I love his personality, and I think in his sense of humor, and I think he and I just fed off each other really nicely. And of course, Ryan and Justin are amazing. And then Ricky Church, you're also just a consummate badass, sir. And we had a great talk about Star Wars. So it's what is the episode number on that one, Ryan?
Well, it's 90, I believe. Yes.
Was it 90? Yeah. It was episode 90. So check that out. If you like Star Wars, we just talk about Force Ghost, episode 9, J.J. Abrams, and
all the usual BOF Star Wars type of things that come up.
Right. And one last thing. We are going to hopefully be doing our podcast on Sunday, the BOF core dudes, and we're going to talk about our top 10 favorite comic book movie scenes of all time.
And only 8 of them are in the Dark Knight trilogy. I kid. Only maybe. I don't know. We'll see how that pans out.
Oh, what's really funny is 2 of mine are from Zack Snyder films, and so which is really weird for a guy that just hates Zack Snyder, right? Like I hate Zack Snyder, and I'm such an asshole.
Oh, Rick.
But 2 of my scenes, 2 of my top 8 scenes.
I tell you what, it's hard. It was hard to pare him down. It was hard to make him not Batman too.
Because there's a bunch in in the 2 Sam Raimi movies, the first 2. There's a bunch of good scenes in those.
Oh yeah.
Well, I've got one from Spider-Man 2, sir. Still my favorite Spider-Man film to date.
Have you flip-flopped on that?
I have a little bit.
I told you. I rewatched all 3. I rewatched all 3 after Homecoming, and I was like, you know what?
I listen.
Like
Homecoming's
better.
Freaking awesome Spider-Man movie, man. I'm just saying, but yeah, I watched Spider-Man 2.
I like 2.1. It's got a little bit of extra scenes in there.
So good.
Yep. 2.1. That's the way to go.
God, well, let's just wait until we see the 3-hour cut of Superman movie coming next month.
I can't wait for that. I'm excited about that.
And I need him. Yes, the world knows I love Henry Cavill as Superman. I do. He's great. I want him to have a standalone badass movie, but he's not. I don't know. His role in Justice League is, I think, going to be a little sketchy, and so I want to see a good, solid, just Superman
for the life of me. I couldn't figure
movie.
You and I could probably talk for hours about that, so I'm just not going to say anything.
Hey, Man of Steel is my second favorite Superman movie.
Might be mine too. You don't want me to go off on Superman.
See, I think,
and I love Superman.
We need to do a BOF Superman centric podcast.
We absolutely do. Absolutely, Superman is mine.
Call me when you do
that. Oh, we
will.
Don't worry about that.
Listen, I'll say it right now, Chris. We'll do a Superman centric podcast. You're on, and Zachy has to be on that one too, because I promised him as well, and he's a Superman guy. And that guy, what's his name? Maybe I shouldn't talk about this live on a show, but there's Sherez or whatever, Twitter. I don't know. It goes by Kal-El.
Oh, I know who you're
talking about, Ryan. Yeah. He's that guy's great, and he's a huge Superman. I want to do a show with him about Superman. But yeah,
I worked in a comic book store for 6.5 years. And I spent pretty much that entire time proselytizing Superman. Because
trying to convince people why he needs to be... Yeah.
You had people coming off the street talking down on Superman, and I would not have it. Compared with the time I came in, and comparing that with the time that I left there when I moved over here, our Superman orders skyrocketed, and I'm very proud of that.
So amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So cool, man.
Yeah. All right, well, let's see. Who's left? I guess I'm the only one left to plug.
Well, Ryan.
Me.
Well, I'll ask you. Ryan, what would you like to plug, sir?
Well, follow me on Twitter, as always, at SMB_Ryan. And I am also going to be hosting a BOF official Justice League watch party in the Raleigh-Durham area, in actually Cary, North Carolina, at the Frank Theaters, Stadium 11. We're going to also do it on the Saturday, November 18th. So probably like a 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock showing, and then we'll eat dinner at Chewy's afterwards, which is obviously one of Bill's favorite Tex-Mex chains, and yes, we do have one here. So I thought that'd be.
That's right. It just opened, right?
Yeah, it's pretty new. And it's kind of amazing that we have a cool Tex-Mex chain here in North Carolina. So that seemed to be the BOF thing to do. So we'll definitely be doing that, and already had some pretty good interest. So it's pretty exciting. But yeah. So for Peter, Chris, and Rick, I am Ryan, and
announcer Rachel will take us out.
That's right.
Hey now! You've been listening to the Batman on Film podcast, a proud member and the sponsor of the Batman Podcast Network, BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. You can listen to the BOF podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, and wherever good podcasts like this one can be found. Want to advertise on the BOF podcast? Go to advertisecast.com/the Batman on Film Con podcast. Follow Jet on Twitter at Batman on Film and on BOF's Facebook fan page at facebook.com/jet.batmanonfilm. Email Jet via jet@batman-on-film.com. Follow Rick on Twitter @ShewRick and on Facebook at facebook.com/BOF-Shew. For Jet, Rick, Justin, and Ryan, I'm announcer Rachel. Thanks for listening.